Hello and welcome to episode 300 of The Crate and Crowbar. It is the 24th of October, 2019. My name is Chris Thurston, and joining me tonight is mad keen gamer Alex Wiltshire.
Hello!
Close enough for jazz gamer Tom Senior.
Hello.
Dire swamp gamer Marsh Davies.
Howdy.
And burdened with great destiny gamer Tom Francis.
Hello.
We have, for the very first time in podcast history, remembered that we bought a fifth microphone. That
I didn't know this about our podcast.
I didn't either. And it was in the boiler cupboard in the house I was living in for the better part of 4 years. However, that does bring the microphone total to 5, which is sadly not enough for Pip to join us, or is it? Tomorrow, after we record this, I'm going to be recording a bonus mini-pod with Pip, which you will find bolted to this episode at some point that makes sense or doesn't. 300 episodes.
Holy shit.
300 episodes. Yeah, it's been 6 and a bit years, and we didn't stop. Time kept going, the number kept going up, and eventually it was this number.
The taste got hotter and hotter and hotter.
And then colder again, and then hotter again.
That was just the first 3 episodes that got hotter. Colder ever since.
Forming a sine wave throughout history that when entropy gets a hold of it, will just render out to nothing.
It's like Bose noise cancellation.
Yeah, exactly. Just drag select the entire fucking thing, just establishes noise, run noise cancellation for a year, got yourself a hum.
Welcome to the hum.
Welcome to the hum.
It's a milder version of the hiss from Control.
It is. Tom, I said that you were burdened with great destiny for a reason. It's because you got some news.
Yeah, I got some mixed emotions news, I'm afraid. It's somewhat exciting and somewhat sad. I am moving to Vancouver for the foreseeable future, if all goes well. And I haven't mentioned that until now because it's been a bit up in the air. It's been a struggle to see if I can do it at all. But I can, and I'm going next week. So, bye.
See you then.
And with that, he climbs out of the window. Himself into the
He
uncertain
defenestrated himself.
To another continent. Yep, I've been in Bath for 14 years or something. And it's kind of time for a change, and I kind of want to be near other, indie. So Vancouver is kind of an indie hub, and so is Seattle, and Seattle is right next to Vancouver. So it'll be nice to be amongst my people, so to speak, my other people. Moving from Games Journo town to Game Dev town.
Yeah. Well, it's really sad to see you go, obviously, but at the same time, I think it's genuinely a miracle that we had you this long.
Thanks. Yeah. I think.
No, yeah, and it's good news for Canada.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice country. They deserve it.
You're welcome, Canada. Love Bath.
I had to take an English exam to do this move.
How'd you do?
And, well, funny you should ask. It's rated out of 9, in...
Is it?
Multiple categories. Yeah, who knows
Okay.
why. It's not a maths exam. For reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And I got 9 out of 9 in every category except writing. 7.5. I got some feedback of maybe you should listen to read some writing by some native English speakers and see how they use words to kind of look for commonalities. Fix your phrasing.
Was an opportunity to say I'm a regularly published magazine writer.
No, the bureaucracy didn't allow for that, unfortunately.
No.
You did have to, the entire exam has to be handwritten in pencil. And
What the?
I asked ahead of time, knowing my handwriting is terrible, can I write in block capitals? And they said yes. But I still suspect either my block capitals are still illegible, or that was like a ding against my, ability to write in English.
Well, you did pass though, and that's, don't beat yourself up.
You passed being what you are.
7.5 out of 9 is a very good score.
It is, yeah.
The irony is I'm quite bad at speaking. I really mumble, I rush it, I'm not very clear. In the speaking interview, I kind of, you're supposed to speak for 5 minutes uninterrupted. And
What? 5 minutes?
And I spoke for as long as I could, and then I said, how long was that? I said 1.5 minutes. Okay.
What did you speak about? What can you say?
Sorry?
Do you speak about anything? Is it?
Right, so I appreciate this is a difficult challenge for them in terms of how do you make a if you're judging all these things separately, how do you do a speaking exam that doesn't also test the user's reading or writing or listening? You have to give them the question somehow. And, so it's just a conversation with somebody, and they give you a topic to speak on. They obviously don't want to give you too many questions because, A, they want to test how well you can speak fluently. And also they don't want you to fail because you didn't understand the question or something like that.
Right.
So what they try and do is give you like a broad topic so that you can speak for a while. And I can kind of do that. Like since having to do interviews and stuff and doing video things on YouTube, I can speak more or less uninterrupted, and doing this podcast, for example. But then the topic they gave me was talk about a teenager you know.
Oh my God.
I'm 30, well now 38, but I was 37 at the time, and I don't know any teenagers. Why would I know any teenagers?
Yeah, you're in kind of the bit where you're not old enough. You're not so old that you come across your children's teenage friends, and you're too far away from teenagehood.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
I think I've told you this already, Alex, but I talked about your son Jack, who's, is he a teenager? Not quite, but he is now.
Yeah.
My good friend Justin Bieber
He's Canadian, isn't he?
Did you? They would love that.
I believe he was born in London, Ontario. I don't know why I know that.
Wow.
That would explain the t-shirt you're wearing. Biebenauts.
Love that teenager. I'll take that back.
Tom there embodying the moral crisis at the centre of Fire Emblem Three Houses.
I think that was one of the red flags they were looking for with this question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you got in.
Yep.
You got it in.
Did you get an acceptance letter like UCAS or something? Or is it you passed?
Yeah, you get invited to apply, and then you apply. Now I'm actually in a weird stage where you don't get what I'm going for at the moment is a work permit, on a temporary basis, and you don't get it yet. You just have to show up and you pick it up at the airport, which is very weird to me. But so I don't have the thing that tells me I'm allowed to be there. I'm just going to show up and say, hey, you said I can have one. Can I have it?
That kind of rings true. I flew into Vancouver for the first time in late August. I've actually been to Vancouver twice in the last couple of months now. And I had never been to Canada before, but I've been to America a lot. And superficially, when you arrive, the kind of security setup is very, very similar until you realize that, it was just way nicer and quicker. And I said, I'm here for work. And they were like, okay. It was as opposed to the first time I went to the US where I got grilled about whether or not I genuinely was a fan of the, CSI New York, or it was just my mum that liked it.
Yeah, when I went through the States security system, the guy who was grilling me talked to me a lot about, what was that film about Disney? Walt Disney, played by Tom Hanks, and had Emma Thompson in it.
Futureland?
No, Saving Mr. Banks. That's
right.
What it's called. But he'd seen it the previous evening, and he gave me a blow-by-blow account of its plot details while emptying my suitcases onto the floor. It was a surreal
There must be a reason for this then, if this keeps coming up. Or maybe there isn't.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Anyway, congratulations, Tom.
Yeah, well done.
Congratulations,
And
Tom.
goodbye.
And goodbye. You'll be back in the UK every now and then.
Yeah, I'm going to come back about 4 times a year just to see family and stuff, and for board meetings for my company now. Yeah, hopefully some of those times will coincide with pod times and I can guest again.
Yes, we'll see.
Consider what's your writing score?
What was your speaking score?
9 out of 9.
Oh, damn.
Full marks in everything except writing. Just that writing weakness I've got to work on. It might take a 9-year vocational course, writing for a magazine or something.
Well, we should do our best to impair all of our speaking scores with delicious Maker's Mark. Thanks again, Tom. Is there any news anyone wants to discuss? Any video games news that we discussed on this video games podcast?
It's just something I saw moments before coming onto this podcast was that it's been announced that Conan O'Brien will be in Death Stranding. He gives you a hat, which is the face of an otter, and it allows you to go down rivers on your back.
Holy shit.
You flap your kind of wrists about as well.
Yeah, you kind of have your wrists kind of together and in front of your chin, and you kind of just paddle your paws up in the air, up and down.
In many ways, the Conan O'Brien side of this is the least surprising part of it.
Yeah.
What is that game? What the fuck what has he made?
I keep seeing, so I saw the headline and I saw the thumbnail going along with it, and that face is fucking scary.
Conan O'Brien's
Yeah,
face.
it doesn't look like Conan O'Brien.
No, I didn't realise
anything.
it was him. I just thought, it's a weird choice that they've made to have Conan O'Brien's voice, but also have this horrible mangled face. and then you catch him in different lighting, you're like, maybe.
He's got quite a lot of cameos because Keely's in it as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Isn't Jeff Keighley just like a mission-giving NPC who says yes or something?
Yeah.
But some of them just have their physical likeness, but not their voices. So, Nicholas Winding Refn, terrible director, is in it. But he's just his physical likeness, which is weird because nobody recognizes him anyway.
It's the only, I suppose I wouldn't know what his voice is either, but yeah, both of them bad.
I think that's true of Guillermo del Toro as well, right? I think
Yeah, I think
someone else
so,
is
yeah.
voicing him.
Guillermo's in it
Which
as well.
it sort of sucks for those voice actors because like they're not going to get any credit for their performance, really.
Yeah.
I saw all the posters recently that they put out, and it's got a little bit of that. It's definitely got uncanny valley recreations of all them actors, what Hideo Kojima decided should be in it. Like it took me a while to realize that it was, Lea Seydoux, and then when you see that, you're like, oh, it is, yeah, but
Almost.
yeah, almost. And yeah, it's something faintly creepy to me about real actors getting scanned in and then sort of,
And then given backstories where they breathe through their breasts inexplicably or
yeah,
something.
I was actually thinking about Quiet when I was saying that. It's the same sort of process by which,
It's like that feeling when you see a photo shoot from one of these generic photo shoots and it's been put on a BBC headline about smack addiction or something. I think, did that model really know what they were signing up for?
In that same, in the same announcement about Conan O'Brien, didn't he, or I think it was on the show, on his show or whatever, didn't Kojima say that, who's the star in the game? What was in
it's Norman Reedus.
Norman Reedus asked for bigger, thicker arms. I want to be more muscly. Make me more muscly. You change everyone else's face. I want more bigger muscles.
What did they give him that?
Apparently so.
Okay.
Yeah.
No reedy arms for Reedus.
No reason.
Weedus no more.
Now I am Buffus.
That's the name of the main character.
Honestly,
Norman Buffus.
It seemed totally in keeping with the rest of the naming conventions.
I think before every character appears, there's a little subtitle which is just my best friend, this actor. It's out, isn't it, soon? Or has it gone gold, or is it?
I think it's gone. What the fuck does gone gold mean? Tom, what does gone gold? Have you ever gone gold, Tom?
Well, so in the 1600s, game developers, when they finished, could not release their game unless they forged it out of gold. And so the final CD, they didn't have DVDs at that point in the 1600s, but the final CD had to be made of solid gold, and then you'd send that out to your distribution castles. And
I thought it was like finally finished the game, and therefore you could watch Going for Gold.
It means a lot less in the era of day zero patches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I believe it's done that. But I don't, because the copies are in reviewers' hands, aren't they?
That's why I can't talk about it, because I've heard lots of opinions from people, and I'm dying to tell you guys about it during the break. But I have to
Actually,
teach them.
I guess it's not even just day zero patches. Like, we're past that era now. We're into the era where, like, with digital purchases, even if you had to lock it in for PS4 certification or whatever at a certain date, if you pass that and you have updates to it, I would assume you can get those into the version that a digital purchaser downloads in the first place. Like, it's not like an update they have to install afterwards.
Well, I guess it goes for what goes on the actual disc. There's a lock day for that. But then, come on, let's grow up, everybody. Everyone knows all the data on the disc is going to be replaced on the first day. So just have a suggestion of the game on the disc. Like, it could be fucking anything. Because it's all going to get overwritten. No one's going to see.
Just a notepad file with your idea for the game. That's the Gold Master.
Oh yeah, so like 10 print, here's my game.
I think the reason it had to be gold originally is that if you do change the Gold Master, it changes every other copy of it.
If you destroy the Gold Master, they all die. It's a lot like fantasy Sauron logic. I did see, so I don't know what I was listening to on YouTube, but it auto played a piece of music for Death Stranding by Apocalyptica, which is like the the cello metal band. And it was alright, but I liked that the top voted comment was something like, "Who's ready for ladders and pissing?" And it had been upvoted like 4,000 times. So people clearly are ready, very ready for cameos, ladders and pissing, which is, as far as I know what this is.
Kojima's very good at verbs. He's good at his game verbs, you've got to admit.
Mm-hmm. There has been like a silliness arc with this game. Like the graph of the silliness over time has gone from like 0 or negative 100 to positive 100 as they've revealed more about it. Like the early stuff was so fucking serious and so like dark and weird, and then as it's got closer to release, like, oh, so you can piss on mushrooms. Here's your giant extendo ladder. Conan O'Brien's in it. Turn into an otter.
I think someone on Discord referred to the technique scene, I think in the gameplay trailer, where you can choose if you're overwhelmed by enemies to throw the package that you're trying to deliver at them as DPD strike. So it was very good.
You should have to take a photo of it as well to prove where it is.
Exactly.
Do you know what?
This package has been delivered.
But like, if Kojima caught wind of that, like, I can imagine him going, right, okay, talk to DPD, see if we can get a deal struck up. This is happening.
DPD is in it. The CEO of DPD just shows up.
What else has happened video game news-wise? I suppose the Ubi things got delay.
Oh, yeah. To increase development time.
Wow. Yeah, that'll do it. Anyone thoughts have?
I'm still looking forward to Watch Dogs.
Yeah, same.
I'm pretty much always positive for video game delays because I haven't been impatient for a game for decades at this point.
Had they announced a release date? I don't think they had, right? So
that's the other thing. They didn't even know what the release date is.
Yeah.
I think it was just 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah.
For Watch Dogs. So, I mean.
And now
I guess it is
a different time later, perhaps. It's fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks. We should talk about games that people have been playing. Tom Senior.
I've been playing The Outer Worlds, which I reviewed for PC Gamer this week.
Amazing. I'd like to institute a rule, in addition to the rules we normally abide by. If anyone accidentally says Outer Wilds in the subsequent podcast, we have to drink.
Oh, God.
I was desperately trying hard during writing the review not to call it Outer Wilds, because I think whoever requested code for PC Gamer for the game called it Outer Wilds in the emails.
It's especially cruel, confusion because, Outer Wilds is about a series of worlds. And Outer Worlds, although it also has worlds in it, it kind of has a Wild West kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a fucking semantic nightmare. But yeah, the game's quite good. Is what
So most of the reviews about
you were born to review this.
I gave it a score of 79 out of 100. Stupid as scores are, but I think the problem they might run into is that it looks a lot like Fallout in the just the kind of retro futuristic technology and the idea that it's sort of sci-fi, but everyone's in a dark situation, but they're quite cheerful. There's that type of humor. But
slightly retro-y sort of 50s sci-fi as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the art style is really, really reminiscent of Fallout.
It's by Obsidian as well, right?
Yeah, it's by Obsidian.
Do you think it's made from the offcuts of a Fallout game that they pitched and then didn't succeed to get greenlit by Bethesda?
It doesn't feel like that because, actually the environments and all that are really well structured, and the places are so varied, and
There's a light dunk on Bethesda.
I've fallen out of love with Bethesda games. I totally bounced off Fallout 4 because I was so bored of just being in a wasteland again, and I didn't get the sense of kind of delight and discovery from exploring a giant sandbox world from it. I wasn't running into the kind of fun stuff that I've run into in Fallout 3 or Skyrim. But this isn't structured like that at all. This is just hopping from medium-sized planetary zones, different planets across the solar system, the occasional space station, and it's an absolutely you can just breathe through it lightly without worrying too much about any of the systems, and just enjoy the humor and enjoy the kind of the beautiful and extremely varied environments. Which the advantage you have of just hopping between places is that you can just change the color palette from one place to another and nip back and forth in your spaceship and do little side quests and pick up really stupid ray guns and stuff like that, and hear more jokes and kill lots of very stupid enemies that don't do very much.
Are the jokes good?
I prefer the sort of the references. And, so for example, there's loads of Red Dwarf in it, for example. And, in that there's kind of, your ship, has its own version of Holly from Red Dwarf, who's a kind of sardonic AI, basically, that kind of admonishes you and you have to interact with them. Some of the companions are good, I would say. I think that it's not quite funny enough to be worth playing just for the jokes. But I think if you have a really soft spot for pulpy sci-fi that has like Jetsons style ray guns and stuff like that, it's really, really good fun. It has lots of kind of stat sheets and lots of perks and lots of things that you can toy with. But none of them are particularly consequential. Like it's a really kind of, it's the illusion of a layer of RPG over what's essentially a kind of conversation game. It feels to me more like a choose your adventure. And the quests branch in entertaining ways. And, I was never invested in any of the characters really, but it was still really fun just to, you constantly betraying people for various reasons, basically. And you can decide with the corporations who actually cruelly own the entire system. And of course there are, people who are fighting against that. But the people who work for the corporations are like really cheerful about it because they sort of have a place in the universe, and people who are outside of that, have relatively miserable lives in lots of cases because they're sort of fighting the system, which is fun. Do you want to side with one or the other? And you can constantly just switch allegiances and be a total dickhead, like, quite often throughout the game. So I enjoyed it. It's good, kind of like touch RPG that I think really, really fills a hole. Like it really, there's a gap for that type of RPG where it's only about 25 hours long. And it's just well made, and it breaks in acceptable ways. Like, I blew a man into many pieces and looted an entire mining suit, some meds, some money from his right leg, which is just a classic kind of video game contrivance, right? Like you sort of expect that shit to happen. But, unlike,
it's probably in his shoe.
It was all in there. Massive, massive shoe. But it's not like, Obsidian has a reputation for releasing quite buggy games sometimes, and this isn't buggy in that way, and it's actually, it feels really solid and well made and really fun.
It sounds kind of, Vampire the Masquerade-y in scope. Would you say that's a fair comparison? Because that's about 25 hours long, hub worlds, RPG sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd say it's way more, prescriptive than that in terms of you're literally just bouncing from NPC to NPC.
Right.
Without, so you don't have the thing where you can play a vampire that just lives underground, and that's a totally different game that you play within that world. Like, there's nowhere near that depth of experience within these small areas. You're just kind of going from NPC to NPC, picking up weird sci-fi stuff, shooting some dogs on the way. And that's pretty much the extent of it, really. Which is really reductive, but nonetheless, it is a satisfying experience. It's not like it's not a Disco Elysium type experience. Like, it's not gonna
say
you think about anything. It's not gonna raise any dilemmas or really kind of interrogate the human condition at all. But you do get to pick up energy guns that turn people into dust that you can then loot and take entire armor suits out of. It's that type of game.
Do you think the Fallout comparison might actually help it? Because I think, didn't Bethesda announce like a subscription plan for 76?
Oh yeah, that's the news.
That's some news.
And
what was the news? I missed this. What was
they're doing a subscription plan
for Fallout 76.
Is it
$13 a month?
What'd you get?
Will allow you to play on a private server.
And there's a single player mode.
Wait,
that's part of the subscription.
It's a subscription just for that game.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you bought the game.
Okay, that's why I didn't hear about it. Because if I'd read it, I'd have instantly tried to forget it.
I saw another good tweet today, which I can't remember the provenance of, which was try and hold yourself with the confidence that Bethesda holds Fallout 76.
It is weird, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
It's such a relentless stream of negative news about that game. There are I have friends who are into it to various degrees, but sort of not mega enthusiastically. It's always like, it's a lot better than people say, or, it hasn't broken as badly for me as it has for others. But yeah, this plan, I mean, you can sort of see the business logic of it as like, since there are some people who are super into it, then let's milk those people rather than trying to broaden its appeal, because it's obviously a bit of a poison chalice for everyone else. But then obviously it makes you look really bad because of what you're doing.
Get really strong, like, bin Destiny vibes from it. But Destiny climbed out of the bin over time. So maybe just focusing on it will eventually turn it into something. But the reason I brought it up is because presumably Fallout's one of the biggest, selling franchises in the world, I suspect. Fairly safe to say. And
for all we know.
Well, right. But, it always is enormously popular whenever it comes along. I think 76 wasn't necessarily an exception to that. So I'm kind of wondering whether this is a good time to release something like Outer Worlds, because people will want something like what this is, and they're used to accepting a certain level of jank from Fallout.
There's a massive gap for that sort of game as well, because like everyone desperately wanted Bethesda to announce Skyrim, and they sort of did, but you know, you'll see this in 10 years type of way. Whereas just a nice sort of relaxing, dedicated single player RPG with no bullshit and no subscription services and no kind of like microtransactions or anything, it is just a nice, easy thing to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, with Cyberpunk months away as well.
Yeah.
It seems like in a lot of ways the closest thing recently has been Borderlands 3. And that's a sci-fi, Wild West-ish thing where you jump between different planets that all look really different, and you level up. And but I'm guessing what are like the main differences between this and a Borderlands game?
So it's not an amazing shooter, but it's a very funny shooter. In that the way they've kind of overcome the lack of tactical intrigue is to make dudes explode in super funny ways while screaming like really overwrought things. And another example of jank that I mentioned in the review as well is like I shot a guy's head off and there was no more head, like it was gone. But he fell over screaming, my eyes, I can't see.
So the game knew something had happened to his head.
The game had registered
That'll do.
that it had been hit, but not that I had absolutely vaporized his butt. So there's lots of stuff like that, and lots of screams. And
I killed a guy in Borderlands and he said, "Joke's on you, I was in massive debt."
That's a good one. So yeah, it's not a good shooter really, like, but the guns are super silly and really fun. You can sort of mod them to have like energy effects or lightning effects that make things explode in interesting different ways. But yeah, Borderlands is kind of a fun shooter, right? Like it's actually got some chops.
Can you like talk your way out of quests instead of shooting?
Often, yeah. In fact, most of the quests are very talky, actually. Often, the combat tends to be friction between journeys between NPCs, and most of the actual quest resolution happens during conversation. But often in those conversations, you have the option to pull out a gun or just to kill them, basically, which is fun. So yeah, it's definitely leaning on, again, as I said, the choose your own adventure thing rather than the kind of, it's not a shooter. It's not a dedicated shooter at all.
How much does it branch at a kind of top story level? Like, it sounds like individual quests, you get some choices, but is that like is it one of those sort of play it a couple of times to figure out how you could do things differently games, or is it
Yeah, there's loads of different endings. And it also has there's a remarkable scope to betray the main sort of factions at any time, and really change things up. And it kind of reminds me almost of Alpha Protocol in that respect. And Alpha Protocol was like a really, like absurdly ambitious, branching RPG. But in this, like, there are characters that you can just turn against. Like, it constantly gives you the options to, do you want to go against this guy? Do you want to go against this corporation? Where do you want to sit? And then it'll let you change your mind later. So there's charting your path through that is really fun.
Oh, cool.
Even though I was never necessarily that invested in, like, any of the characters particularly, or, like, any of the people in the world, which is a shame for a role-playing game. But I was entertained. Like, it's just light-hearted fun, basically, I think, with some nice choices.
How do you feel it sits next to something like Divinity, which I would argue has also kind of swept into this place, right? Like, I think anyone who's like, where's a Fallout successor or a successor to Fallout 3 should play something like Divinity, even though it's a change of perspective, because it's all that freedom and all that sort of systemic stuff, but done well.
The Outer Worlds isn't a sandbox. Like, it's not,
right.
It's not a sort of, systems obviously, but it's not systems driven in the way that Divinity is. Divinity is like quite an exciting elemental sandbox, and you can there's loads of game in that, even outside of the quests and even outside of the conversations. Also, I just find that there's just much more imagination in Divinity's classes and characters and the way that they can react to each other. Just being an undead with a bucket on your head is just a better idea than anything in the Outer Worlds. So, you know what I mean? It's that extra creative leap to do something. Given the tone of the Outer Worlds, they could do stupid stuff. They could do more like dumb humor like that. But they don't.
I feel like this has been an absolute masterclass in faint praise.
That's what 79 means. It's a good game.
Yeah.
But it's not a great game.
It feels like one of those, like, those like wire puzzles where you can't go like too high or too low or else it buzzes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just get that thing all the way to the end.
I'm trying to thread that needle for sure. Yeah. Yeah, again, like I said this before on the podcast, like it's a Saturday morning cartoon game. It's literally just, if you want to breeze through something that's just quite fun and you don't have to think about too much, it's a really nice RPG for that. And it's not too long as well. Like it's a good length. It's the right length. And given that so many RPGs, even like Disco Elysium and stuff, are just massive and like a novelistic endeavor if you want to get through it, then this is a nice kind of alternative to that.
Cool. We should maybe return to Disco Elysium. I suspect it'll come a bit more, but I appreciate that more people on podcast now.
Yeah.
More people than played it.
I played the whole thing, start to finish, since I was last on this podcast. I really like it. Unsurprisingly. A thing that I wasn't ready for until it actually came out was that there's no combat, which I didn't know, and that's brilliant. That makes it so much. It just removes one of the many things you can get wrong in an RPG, because like there are very few RPGs that are like brilliant in dialogue and in combat, because those are two completely different things. And it has so many, trying to put combat into these games, it connects up to so many different things about how you develop your character. If you're having to decide between putting points into persuasion versus points into, actual like weapon skills, that's a decision where you're really being pushed against like, well, I kind of have to choose this because otherwise I'm not going to be combat viable, and and this just gets away from all of that. And it's the way it works is like the complexity is all in the very start. Like when you actually have to create a character, it simplifies it by letting you choose one of three archetypes, but two of those have one psyche, I think. The one that like means that if anything in any way disturbs you in the game and you haven't yet found any magnesium to take to recover from that, that's just game over. And I died from looking at my car. Or looking at my partner's car, actually. I looked at it and I like looked at the steering wheel or something, and then I didn't even like follow what was going on in the conversation that was so disturbing to me, but it took a point of morale off me. I only had one morale and I hadn't got anything that could restore morale, so I just died then and there. That was game over. So I actually went back and restarted it, made a new character, and I wanted to like be a character of extremes. I wanted to be like a super smart. I wanted to play like the genius cop, basically to emulate all my favorite detective shows. And I thought that meant putting like 5 points in this, 1 point in that, 5 points in this, 1 point in that. And actually you can, even if you go quite sort of middle of the road, like 3 and 2 and that kind of thing in those stats determine, there's like 4 key stats, determine your starting skill level in all the sub skills of them, and also how many extra points you can put in on top of that. And so putting 3 points in a thing means you can ultimately have 6 points in any of those skills. Whereas putting 1 in means you start with 1 and you can only ever have 2. Unless you find someone that's...
Yeah, it's quite a big force multiplier going to 2 points then.
Yeah, so it's extreme. If you go for extremes at the start, you've gone for extreme extremes, and now you're dead from looking at a car. And so I swallowed my pride a bit and went back and did like, okay, I'm gonna have, I think I even had 3 psyche, so I can look at 3 cars and I stuck with, I think, 2 endurance, and that, so obviously the really unique and cool thing about the game is that those skills are also voices in your head that you have conversations with and who will try and push you in certain directions. And it's so cool that is, the way they integrate is really smart, because, it's ridiculous to have 24 different skills, all of which are basically voiced, like not actually voice acting for those particular things, but like you can write.
Yeah.
They're going to be characters you've got to write for. And the way, I mean, it is incredibly complex and ambitious, and they have, apparently it's been in the works for 15 years.
I'm not sure if the game has, but the setting has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, cause it was the role-playing setting that they devised.
For a novel
game,
was written in it as well.
Yeah.
But the way it's achievable at all is that a lot of those interjections are telling you about what the next bit of dialogue is going to be. And, like empathy will tell you what this person is feeling, which is something you can just insert after the thing they've said or before the thing they've said, which doesn't require the thing they've said to change. It doesn't require necessarily your dialogue options to change. And that stuff was really cool. I went really big on rhetoric and logic, and I loved having just before a big
YouTuber.
There's a polo neck shirt gives you -1 empathy and +1 rhetoric. That's perfect. And I loved facing like a really big decision. Some of these fucking dialogue trees, there'll be 9 options to choose from. It's insane. And just before that, rhetoric will kick in and say, give you advice like, don't go for the juggler on this. Like, warm them up first with something irrelevant, and then look through those options. I pick something irrelevant, and that works. And I'm really interested to know how, because it's an amnesiac plot, I'm really interested to know if they ever change what your past is based on what you chose since the start of the game. Because I had a really good moment where I just kind of talked a bunch of people into kind of betraying each other and just completely manipulated them into giving up things they didn't want to give up. And then right after that, they were sort of talking about what they'd been told about me before I got there. And they basically said that was my rep, that was my, my superpower, that I would talk people into betraying each other. And I wonder if I
suspect that's deterministic, or that's determined by...
Yeah, I'm sure they wouldn't, that conversation made reference to the fact that I'd just done that. So obviously you wouldn't hear that if you hadn't just done that. But I wonder if they actually change what the truth is, as well as just which bits of it you hear.
It's interesting because it also gives you the option to determine some of that truth for yourself, or at least your relationship with it. I haven't finished it. Actually, we should figure out who has played it. Everybody?
I've played a big chunk of preview build, but not the full final game just yet.
Yeah, okay. I played a big chunk, but again, this was a older build and I haven't gone back, so my save won't work.
Obviously, we'll steer clear of spoilers because it's a very spoilable thing. That many voices thing is such a good idea. Not just because it works well in an RPG, but it also, it's such a good idea that it doesn't even feel like an extra thing they bolted on. It feels more like they took away a barrier that other games writing has, where usually if you're going to say what the character's thinking, you restrict yourself to one voice and you just make up what this character's voice is that's in their head. And that isn't really, it's not how my brain works anyway. I don't know about anyone else, but I have multiple voices in my head telling me what to do at all times, sometimes disturbingly.
Canada.
But
so it's the end of Akira.
Those, a lot of people have some form of intrusive thoughts to one degree or another. And, that being obviously that can vary in severity a lot, but most people just have things that pop into their head that they don't want to do and that don't feel like, this is me thinking, seriously considering this idea. I should jump into traffic or whatever.
Yeah.
And, the fact that you have voices in your head that just sort of raise weird ideas, is, I think, just true about human brains. And if you just start from that premise, it kind of opens up a whole new way of writing. And it works best for me when obviously it gives rise to so many jokes. There are so many good gags in this that really kind of, they feel very natural. They don't feel like, I was watching a little clip about The Outer Worlds, and there was a joke, sort of a jokey character that was it was just really a Zap Brannigan character, and he was just doing Zap Brannigan lines, and it just kind of, I know the premise of this joke right at the start. I know that you've written this just to be a joke, and none of it really worked for me for that reason. And, Disco Elysium feels like the other end of the spectrum, where everything just sort of feels like they started writing it and then saw a spot for it'd be funny if this happened, and then, it all feels very natural with, voices in your head. There's one, I wasn't familiar with this quote, but I was in a really big, it was that same big conversation where I ultimately played everyone off each other, but I just failed a skill check. And I think it was a drama check, and drama is your lying/lie detector skill. But it's also true to its name. It's just a very dramatic voice in your head, and it keeps calling you my liege and stuff. And I rolled a drama check and I failed it. I don't know what I was trying to say, what would have happened if I got it right, but because I failed it, what I said was 300 Lears, and I can't remember the first line. And then no one knows what the fuck you're talking about. It goes really badly. And then later, rhetoric and logic are trying to count things you say, and drama says, no, say 300 Lears, and I can't remember the first line. And logic is no, he said that last time, and really didn't need to anything yet.
I think one thing that's actually also great about the way it's written is, obviously you've got the voices in your head arguing, but it's also written often as if the dialogue choices that you're given are all things you're considering saying. Because in a lot of dialogue choice RPGs, it's one of these is the character that you are, and the others are options to be a different character, right? That's the typical sort of Mass Effect or the LA Noire kind of punch versus kiss versus question kind of, trifecta. Whereas this is sort of it uses the dialogue options. It's one of the reasons it's discussed as a funny game, actually, is it surprises you in lots of different places. So sometimes it'll be the voices cropping up that will offset the thing you thought was happening, and sometimes it'll just be one of the options you're given. It's completely sideways, but feels kind of like sort of appropriate to the character in that moment. Like asking someone if you can have their cigarette midway through a conversation. I managed to get 2 achievements in a row. One for being the goodest cop. And the other for being the sorriest possible man. And
so did I.
Yeah. And, I just very sorry. And actually, and that's partly because I was, playing myself, for this first run through, but also because, I really appreciate one thing it does, which is it repeatedly gives you the ability to say either I don't know or I'm sorry or both. And very rarely do games even, and it's like, that's one of the reasons it gets away, I think, with Amnesiac Protagonist or the reason it's good that it's an Amnesiac Protagonist is it also gives you that freedom to be like, I'm just a big useless dick and I don't know I shouldn't be given this responsibility and I'm sorry I'm a policeman and no one should have let me do this. and not only does it let you do that, but that's not just like a kind of punishment thing. It encourages other characters to sometimes step in and say, don't worry about it. Or occasionally, you should be sorry, but how do we move on from that? Which is a much more mature position for a game to take than like, I was thinking about this because I'm still plugging away at Fire Emblem, which I still haven't finished, although I'm getting further and further and further into it. And that is the story of, and I love that game, and they're opposite games. And one of the reasons is Fire Emblem is very much like, you have no fucking idea who you are, where you are. There are voices in your head, but they're very different to the voices in your head from Disco Elysium. In fact, this would be a hell of a mashup.
And now some voices in your head in Fire Emblem I don't want to hear.
No one knows who you are, where you came from. Your own dad is a complete stranger to you. Your age is question mark. Do you want to be a big teacher in this school? And like, at no point does it let you say, sorry, I don't know why I've been put in charge of this. I probably shouldn't be leading children into battle against other children. But I love Disco Elysium because it lets you kind of roll through it. And I think also it helps that it's not like it manages to feel quite high stakes without the stakes actually being wildly disproportionate. Like I've gotten to a part in it now where something I've done has genuinely kind of sort of shaken the character, and therefore by virtue of me being that character, sort of it was very effectively written. It's kind of a shocking moment for a few different reasons. And that is achieved with far smaller dramatic parts than most RPGs require to kind of get you to pay attention to something, which is another one of its qualities, I think.
I had sorry.
The sorry thing is interesting because I think it picks up on something which is unusual at Disco Elysium, where all the choices you can make, like in a normal RPG, you would see all these choices and you'd think, oh, that's a valid path through this game. But actually Disco Elysium isn't necessarily setting up the choices that are available to you as equally just, if you see what I mean. Like, being overly sorry, you get the sorry cop meter goes up or whatever. But actually there's a difference between atonement and being sorry. And, it points out that maybe just being sorry is just being sad and pathetic. And actually there are other ways in which you can atone and grow.
But that's hard.
But the choices it offers you might think, oh, this is the sorry path. I can max out my sorriness.
Yeah.
And I don't think the game really works like that. And I think a lot of people, and the game sets itself up for a lot of criticism by making available things for you to say which are possibly disgusting. I think, was it a Waypoint playthrough somebody linked in our
Giant Bomb
was Giant, right? Yeah, and they encountered some dialogue options which I had not come anywhere close to initiating, and it was pretty fucking horrible sexist stuff, and they couldn't seem to back out of it.
Yeah,
but the thing is, obviously, I can understand somebody playing that and being like, wow, this game is horrible. I don't understand why I'm being forced to say something that I feel so strongly is wrong. But actually, what the game is doing is saying, you have failed in some prior part of the battle for the sovereignty of your brain. Like, forces inside your mind have been at war and the wrong side has won. So you should sort of like look at that dialogue option and think, wow, okay, it's almost like a simulation game, and your operation of this disheveled man has gone wrong and you have not succeeded. And so he's come to this conclusion where he only has one option to say. But people will think, because it's shaped like an RPG, that this is like, oh, this is a valid choice. It should express what I feel. And it's not that.
Because that's a real, I mean, I always, it's a role-playing game. Like, it's the most purest role-playing video game that I've come across, because it's one where it tells you you're going to occupy this character and you will have some choice over them, but you will also be bound into situations and you will have to barrel along with the stuff that's been, you've been saddled with. And I think that is a fucking cool role-playing situation. Like a role-playing, like a pen and paper role-playing game is shit if you get total choice over everything you do and who you are and the situations you're in. Like that, this is much purer than that.
You should be able to say when you're playing a pen and paper role-playing game, I don't think the right thing would be the right thing for my character. My character would do something stupid at this point.
And then that's where the fun of the game comes from. Yeah. Or, and I think this is the case of Disco Elysium, where actually it's most interesting, because I think you have to trust in the game when you're given a choice where your character's going to say something really fucking nasty. You have to trust in the writers that they're going to say something about what he says, and you are part of that. And actually, I trust that the game is going to take you somewhere interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Like there are many game makers I would not trust, but that one I would.
I think my experience with it, like, it's entertaining to play this complete shambles character who's barely in control of himself. But do you have any moderate options as you play through it?
It's sort of,
I mean,
well,
it goes
it's the thing.
Extremes, right?
I've ended up as the sorriest man in the world by sort of chasing that. The thing is, it tries to chase you out of that.
Yeah.
Or to find the weaknesses in a moderate position.
I got an achievement called World's Most Laughable Centrist.
Oh, that answers my question. Thank you very much. That's very good.
I didn't like the world, and the political history of the world is really interesting, but almost every time someone tells you about it, you're faced with 5 dialogue options, 4 of which are things like, all of the middle class must be killed versus corporations are glorious and we must worship them versus I think this race should be exterminated versus I don't know. And so I picked I don't know quite a lot. Because the other options were insane. Yeah. And then if you do that, it's sort of it feels like a bit of a mismatch really, because it's making a point that's legitimate in our world, which is, I think it's legitimate to criticize centrism in our world, where there are legitimate options that are sort of well thought out and reasonable. In this world, you're being given like a 1-paragraph summary of what's happened here and then being asked to take like extreme racist position or extreme, violent, communist revolutionary position. And if you don't take either of those, you're a worthless centrist who's like just, ruining the world by not doing anything.
I don't know if this is universally the case, but I have noticed that occasionally empathy will crop up and allow you a different option in those scenarios or something like it, because often, like, this is one of the things that's interesting about it. Like, often the sort of tenor of your response is depending on who you're talking to. Like, when there's a conversation, I think it's on the first night when you talk to Kim, your partner, you can have a more nuanced conversation about what it means to be a police officer in this particular society than you can have with some other people, where you might be limited to saying, like, cops are amazing and completely necessary and I should own a gun. Or, I don't know why I'm like this, I'm sorry, I should never have had this badge. And like, and like, I've had a couple of circumstances where it's like, you understand that this person feels strongly about this, so you can take a different line through it than you can if like, it might be an interesting consequence of being a more logic driven character where you get pushed into more extreme positions because you don't take the empathetic middle. It's kind of interesting. But I agree, it tries to lay traps for you in terms of not letting you kind of skirt past.
I think I was saying to Tom the other day, but I kind of see, I mean, it's probably, I don't know whether this is being a bit determinist about it, but like this was made by a group of like largely Estonian people who come from a country which has reeled from being destroyed by through the Second World War, taken over, annexed by a communist nation, then reeled out of glasnost into hyper capitalism. Like it's a place where extremes of society have existed over the last sort of 60, 70 years. And like, it's been written by people who grew up as it reeled from one needle, end of the needle to the other. And like, maybe some of what we're experiencing is actually a product more of the fact that we've lived in this kind of incredibly stable fucking country.
Up until a couple of years ago.
But like, you know, I think that, you know, sort of what we're experiencing now is probably like,
It's our own glasnost. Fantastic.
For a lot of places in the world, they're going to go, what the fuck is the fuss about
Well, right.
that?
I mean, so I think this is one of its things. It's actually one of its themes that is the most effective is that it's fundamentally about a country that doesn't have control of its own destiny.
Exactly.
That is auto-governed
Yeah.
by a foreign body. That's not a spoiler. It's just a truth of the universe.
Exactly.
And that's interesting because there are going to be plenty of players in plenty of places in the world where that is a familiar but underrepresented way to be. Because typically your fantasy kingdoms or your sci-fi, you know, civilizations are at least either premier or defined by being on the fringe and rebelling against what is, you know, the status quo in the universe. And I think if you are British or I assume American or from any other kind of traditionally dominant nation, however you want to put it, that is a fairly unusual thing to encounter as a feeling.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that I think I think it's framing of all those sort of political positions it's definitely not subtle, but it is really complicated. It's like there's so much nuance to it.
They're laughing at the extreme, like anybody who has an extreme opinion is laughed at in the game, but also there's this kind of helplessness as if you can only get anything done if you have anything.
Right, and that it's also natural to take an extreme position when you are extremely disempowered.
Yeah.
Like, you know, some of the most, you know, the first sort of really ardent royalist, because there is a royal history to the country, you meet is still wearing his uniform, but he's furious, and all he's doing is rolling little metal balls at a wooden ball forever. Like, and he's angry about that, and he's angry about everything else, and it's this sort of impotent rage, and it's like everyone is sort of, in this, man, I can't talk about this game for any length of time without becoming a huge twat. The one thing that's good about it is, you're not engaging with heads of state, right? You're not, like, the mystery isn't who's, you know, kidnapped the president's family. You've got to save him, drunk detective. Like, well, that'd be a very different game, like Disco Contra. It's, you know, it is, you're just dealing with people who exist in very kind of liminal kind of spaces in this world. And the place that the game is set is explicitly between, you know, different districts in a sort of forgotten place. It's an orphaned place is its way of describing it.
Yeah, and I liked all the people I met, their perspectives all made sense to me and felt nuanced and felt sympathetic, and like, here's our best attempt at like what someone who believes this would say and how they justify it. But then my responses are always the uncharitable version of that, just like exaggerated to comical extents.
Right. I think there is a sort of, like extent to which you're sort of, you're there to explore all these different positions from your not blank, actually blank slate. And it kind of reminds me in a way of like, you're kind of digging through all the different layers of hell of this place, right? Like all the different individual little mini hells everybody lives in, and you kind of sample them all, and you can choose to sort of say, yes, this is the one for me, and then you, and then you move on from it. You know what I mean? Like there's a few different ways in which it works. And the fact that it works as that, and also as, you know, some quite humane kind of kitchen sinky drama is, I think, one of its kind of great assets.
Desperately glad it has a sense of humour, because
it's very funny.
It's very, very funny, genuinely. And without that, I couldn't pull myself through it, I think. You're right, that darkness is there for sure.
And your relationship with your partner, Kim, is just really good, because he sort of by necessity kind of has to be a bit of a straight man, because you are the absolute train wreck of the partnership. And they can't be sure that you will, you know, even have the basic skills to get through anything. And so Kim has to kind of be there to like, in case you can't figure this out, I'll give you a little hint.
Which is quite sweet, actually.
Yeah, he's naturally a straight man, and that could have been really boring, but they make it work really well because he's incredibly understanding and patient with you, but he does have his opinion on what you're doing. He will tell you, I don't see why we're doing this. This seems like a total waste of time. And like 90% of the time he's right, but every now and then I've got some fixation in my head. There was a situation where like, there's just a door that I cannot open, and there's no kind of skill check that seems to work. And then I go and talk to someone, and they just mention the word smooth talking, and I just rhetoric gets up in their head and says, "Oh yeah, smooth talking. That's how we open that door." Okay, I'll go back, and it's like an impossible check. It's like you have to get 20 on 2 dice, and so the skill that you need to add to it is going to be significant. But I was already a specialist in rhetoric, so I'm like, well, this is my main quest now. I'm going to find a way to talk this door open. And every time I came back there, Kim's like, "Come on, what are we doing here? This is why do you even want to get in there? There's no reason to go in there. We have no reason to believe there's any kind of evidence in there." And then eventually, I won't spoil any details of that quest line, but eventually I did it. I got high enough rhetoric, I rolled the right thing on the dice, and I talked my way into the door, and he's like, "Oh, you have to be kidding me."
It's really good. Like there's a bit where you basically get to set how hard you want a quest to be. If someone says like, "How many of these things are you going to find?" Oh, yeah. And it was a fit of like, you know what, I am good at being a policeman. I'm going to find all of them. And then the quest description in the actual journal says, "You're probably not. This is really hard. You can say, I'm going to find one of them."
Yeah, I said that. I'm ready to commit to finding one of these 7 things.
I can't complete that unless I get all of them now. And so I've just fucked it. Like, I think one thing I would add is like, one of the reasons it's really good is because it sets you off in a position of like, it's impossible to get through the opening of that game and you see a million people tweeting like, "I died trying to get my tie at the start of the game." Yeah. One of the reasons it's important it starts with that stuff is because you cannot survive the opening sequence without a character who's busted in some way. And I think that means that you're in a more sort of empathetic position from the beginning than if you, in a traditional RPG where create slightly dodgy character versus create, golden glimmering paladin is a choice you make at the beginning, and then, the game has to kind of respect both. There's no way you get to pre-select, actually, I'm great. And it allows you to play off pathos in some really interesting ways. I don't want to talk about the details, but I think the scene that plays out if you get to the end of the first day without enough money to pay for your room at the hotel bar, is really, really lovely. Like, it's a really good scene between you and Kim. And it gives you the opportunity to like go on a high horse about some stuff, which is completely undeserved. And that's a really interesting kind of like journey to go on where I don't want to talk about it, but basically it allows like, it puts you in a position where you have to have a more nuanced relationship with other people's failings because you're a complete train wreck. And if you decide to go through the game as, actually, I'm an amazing detective and I'm going to take a very hard moral stance on everything, you've already undermined it before the game's even started. Yeah. So you can't paragon.
It's such a good move for an RPG to let you create your character or to pick one of the archetypes and they go, "Ooh, shouldn't have done that. That was a bad choice." It'd be
like if Mass Effect opens, right? Yeah. And Shepard is hoisted up by the monolith and gets the vision from the Protheans, and then he or she shits themselves. And everyone is like, we agree you've got some very important information hidden in your brain. You were great in a lot of other ways, and we all think you should be put in charge, but everyone knew this happened. And it would change the tenor of that relationship. I think it would actually help with some of the Space Dad stuff later on, where it's like, actually, I've never made a mistake, and I'm great at everything, and I can just paragon my way through your life's problems and reunite with your dad, or maybe I'm your dad now, or whatever it is. With the little tenor of like, but that one time when I crap myself would help balance the whole thing out. That's basically Disco Elysium. But what I'm saying is Disco Elysium can be applied to any game, and it makes it better.
But it's like, well, the cool thing is that like, yeah, you're a complete chain wreck and you kind of accept that. But when your detective like does some fucking cool police work and they've kind of just figured something out and you're a part of that, feels so good. And you kind of go, "Oh, you good guy." Like, you saw all the footprints. Oh,
yeah, exactly. The visual calculus skill is fucking incredible.
Why does that feel so good? Because it's not really me who's doing anything. But it does, though. It feels like.
Does, though.
Some proper good. CSI shit.
It's because you're gunning for him. Like, I think that's what it is. Like,
he's the underdog, right? Like, he's in a terrible, terrible position.
And you're kind of like, oh, my faith in him has been repaid. We're with him and like.
For me, it was, like that was the character I set out to build. Was I went for intelligence and I wanted to be Monk or Poirot or whatever. I wanted to just kind of like be the guy who walks in and just sees the whole thing happen. And so that skill is the perfect like embodiment of that. And the first time the footprints thing, you are identifying 8 different people's footprints who walked back and forth repeatedly over the same thing to the point that you can identify like that one of them has asymmetrical treads and stuff. It's an insane level of detail.
But I feel like we've all played a similar version of this game, and I wonder what the game is like for people who have gone down I'm a whole choices. There's when you wake up, there's a woman who's staying in the room next to you, and at certain point she goes back into the room, and apparently you knock on the door, you can hear a shower starting, and there's an option to try and break down the door. Now I'm pretty sure if my character tried to do that, they would break their foot and die. But there are characters out there who would be able to knock that door down, and I wonder what you become after you make that choice, and whether there is any kind of possible redemption for your character. Because the other weird thing about the game is there are explicit suggestions on the tooltips for you to pick weird choices or outlandish choices. And actually, I don't think that is good advice. I think you can send yourself down some pretty dark paths by doing, I'll do that for a lark. One comment to kill the rich, and I'm suddenly a communist,
Yeah, that may be a little bit timid about doing anything crazy. And I think that example we saw in the Giant Bomb video where the person was kind of locked into a horrible choice.
Yeah, I wonder what they did.
I remember that a conversation that precedes that relates to it. I remember saying something along the lines of, to myself, hey, can we do this without all the internalized misogyny? And so I bet at that juncture, there's another option that maybe they picked that as an experiment just to see what happens when you say this, and that the game sort of thought, you're that kind of person, and now
my interaction with the character that precedes that conversation was the one that earned me the most sorry cop achievement. So I think I went down quite a different path.
There are times when, and this is a thing that comes up in D&D as well, where, I rolled an empathy check and I failed it. And my empathy check was to determine, is she mad at me? And I failed it, and my options are no, she's not mad at me. As a player.
I'm going to do a Fantasist playthrough when we get stuck into it this weekend. So there's a moment at the very, very beginning of the game where you look into the mirror, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to know.
I didn't for 2 days.
Yeah. Oh shit, that's how you get a portrait.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you without a portrait?
Yeah. It's just a blur with a nose.
You can also try and
which I feel is in some ways quite fitting. But.
You can also try and pass a check to undo whatever your facial expression is.
Yeah.
Otherwise you grin like an idiot in your profile pic.
A long-term quest is try and wipe the horrible expression off your face.
I actually managed it quite quickly.
There's a moment where it asks you to interpret your own facial expression because you don't know what emotion you're exhibiting.
What am I doing?
Which is an extraordinary RPG decision to make. And I chose, I'm a superstar. And I want to follow that track all the way to wherever that
I'm really interested to see how that works out.
Just a kind of absolutely deluded fantasist who just thinks he's fucking amazing.
It's funny because one of its very early kind of things it insists on you is you will sing karaoke here. And that is a perfect example. That is a perfect example of an intrusive thought, I think. That does happen, right? That is the process you go through. And it's you should sing Meatloaf. No.
Have you ever found that listening back to this podcast has been a perfect illustration of the multiplicity of one's own being?
It is kind of fascinating because, you joke, but yes.
Yeah.
I
don't think that at all. Why the fuck did I say that?
Well, it's also the other way around, which is when you are doing the talking into the microphones, it's getting kind of meta now. You're very aware of what you're not saying, or whether the thing you said was exactly what you meant to say, or whether you should have come in now, or whether you should have let someone else talk, or whether they're waiting to talk, whether they're just, thinking or whatever. And then when you listen back, you can't hear that at all because the voices have gone.
Yeah.
The recording is just...
Well, that was an awkward pause. And then you listen to it back and it was no,
it wasn't. It was just...
That's fine.
That was the screaming jar was opened in my mind because there was momentary silence. I could hear that. No one else could.
Definitely one of the 24 skills in a podcaster RPG creation tree is the urge to interrupt others when you think you have something to say. And I definitely listen to some podcasts where a couple of the hosts have too many points in that skill. Can you just let them finish the damn sentence? They were saying something it was relevant to...
Yeah, self-crosstalk forgiveness impulse would be one of them. It's okay that we're cross-talking, everyone's having fun. Yeah. Man. Podcast Elysium. I'm going to have another glass of whiskey. Tom, can you pass me the bottle?
Another thing I loved was so you get bonuses from clothes, and that leads to, you just hoard all the clothes you find, and what you wear is for me at least, was just a random assortment of things that happen to support all my intellectual skills. But then every now and then I needed to lie, and so I needed all of my drama clothes. And so every time I need to lie, before I get into the conversation, I'm like, okay, put on my drama kimono, my drama string vest, and my drama bow tie.
Kim's just watching you thinking, what's going
Yeah, because
on?
I guess I also have to take off the other clothes first.
Actually, I realised that the anecdote I said on the previous podcast was actually wrong. My trousers and shoes don't improve my esprit de corps, my knowledge of what police might be doing. They improve my savoir-faire. So
they reduce it, right?
They reduce my savoir-faire. So
I went back and put points in savoir-faire in order to make the check you're talking about.
Yeah. But that's why I had to take my trousers and shoes off in order to do a cool jump.
It's fun to contrast the discussions about the Outer Worlds and Disco Elysium just to see like how much meat on the bone there is in this game compared to typical RPGs, which is a huge part of Disco Elysium's appeal.
And it doesn't, you could absolutely, I actually found myself kind of wanting a sort of spin-off game or just a game that's inspired by this where it's way less heavy. Like you could do just a fun comedy version of this. Like it's so, lends itself to comedy so naturally. And also you don't need 24 of these fucking skills. There are like 4 different hunch skills. It's crazy.
I sort of wonder though if some of the reason it's funny comes from the fact that it's also kind of real. You know? Like, as in, like, sort of comedy, good comedy kind of follows truth around, I think. And there's sort of like, there are things in Disco Elysium that are personally quite raw and can be quite evocative in its depiction of actual pain. Not like the Demon Lord blew up my dad pain, but like,
it's a very real pain, Chris.
Yeah, I think you're belittling this pain.
But it's like they're saying something stupid in front of someone you respect.
Yeah.
Like the everyday kind of stuff.
And then, as it meanders and digs into different directions, there's, it gets into some of life's bigger wells of agony. They're all there, all the hits. And I think that's one of the reasons it works as comedy. Like a lot of comedy games, or games that purport to be comedies first and foremost, struggle to stick that landing because nothing matters in that world, and therefore nothing's really that. Not that comedy requires someone to be an asshole necessarily, but like I think there's a fine tonal balance for good comedy where it sort of sits on the edge of kind of slightly too embarrassing to bear versus.
Well, there's no real connection between the comedy of most comedy games and the world in which they operate. Like Borderlands comedy is just some funny lines that are played over a game in which you go around shooting little space dogs, Whereas everything that's funny in that game is about the situation that you're specifically in.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah.
That was the entire.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
No.
Look, with greater depth was none. Yeah.
No, that's completely right. Like it's actually, and that's extremely rare in games actually, that like, cause games can be great vehicles for jokes, like point and click adventures traditionally are. Yeah. And this kind of is a point and click adventure really, it's just isometric. But they very rarely, and in terms of embodying that into what you're doing in the game, they very rarely do it without becoming real meta for a bit, right? Like without drawing attention to the fact that it's weird to do this. Like Disco Elysium has some little bits like that, but really it's just about like the game continually prompting you to make more and more interesting decisions about this character, rather than it setting out to here's the comedy character, right? Like I don't think you would say very many of the characters are there to deliver gags at all. No. Apart from maybe you.
Yeah. Or Kudo. Is it Kudo?
Oh, Kuno.
Kuno, sorry.
Yeah. Even then though.
There's a poignant stuff going on.
And there's some real terror there. Like when, like the fear of being confronted by a shitty kid that definitely has more willpower than you.
I walked up the hill the other day and a kid was riding his bicycle behind me and kind of doing wheelies behind me, threatening to kind of crush me with his front wheel. I don't really know what I could do in that situation to alleviate that kind of, I'm going to get killed by a child terror. And if I turn around and shout at him, I'm going to look uncool, which is even worse.
Yeah, exactly. Like the power game of that is very, very delicate and a real source of anxiety.
What you going to do, boring 35-year-old man, 36-year-old? I don't even know how old I am.
Your face is just a blur with the nose.
It doesn't even matter.
Exactly. And that's one of the things it grasps so well. Like that, and that is like such a rich source of like profound interactive anxiety that it's a miracle games don't go there, right?
That's interesting though, because like in PC Gamer Chat, I don't think Chris would mind me saying this, but like Chris Livingston was completely baffled by this. He was like, he said, why do European comedies and dramas have people being bullied by teenagers. And it was like... It
happens in Space, it happens in Peep Show.
Yeah.
Have you met European teenagers?
Yeah, but it's like...
Does that not happen in the States? It must happen in the States.
What he said was...
I've been to the States. I lived in the States.
What he said amazingly was...
They were chased by shitty children all the time.
No, I never left the house on the basis that I might be shot by shitty children, so...
what he said was, in the UK they just call you a twat, but in the US they've got guns.
Right.
So, I mean, the stakes are just in a completely different place. But it's is social anxiety, isn't it? It's the power imbalance. You can't shout at them. You can't hit them.
There is...
I think you could insulate yourself in the US a bit more as well.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, Chris, that's actually a really interesting point, and maybe it was way beyond the discussion of Disco Elysium, but it's like, way beyond it, but it's like, the assumed power differential is very different in terms of what is possible. In an encounter with a stranger.
It's a tension over what you can do rather than over what's going to happen to you.
Yes.
There is a whole scene about this in Louis, the TV show. That is, I can't remember how old the guy was. I feel like he was sort of teenage, maybe an older teen, who just kind of completely humiliates Louis and just exerts power over him just by threatening violence, basically. And Louis just sort of realizes there's no rational... it just doesn't make sense for me to fight back in this situation. So the guy completely runs all over him. And it reminded me a lot of like the same scenes in Spaced and stuff, but that was the American version.
But yeah, I think it's definitely more complicated than that. But it maybe is particularly European kind of vibe. This shitty kid is yelling at me and I can't really do anything, but I'm locked in this sort of like every route from here is failure kind of power play where the only way to win is to not to play, but that also means you lose.
Yeah,
that's the teen I should have talked about in my exam. Well, there's a guy doing wheelies behind me.
I'm frightened of the teen. On your continent, do you have him?
Rejected.
Because if you do, I'd rather stay. I'm actually emigrating to get away from the teen.
I think there are social situations that threaten to make you a child again if you lose your temper, and I just got one of the
oh yeah, God, you should tell this story because this is a full-on like Disco Elysium kind of.
You're genuinely my true hero as a result of this.
Oh yes.
So this is my like shambles man Disco Elysium story. So I was on an incredibly busy train to Brighton, and that's a long trip from Bath, and many different stops, carrying luggage around for a weekend. Everyone's stressed, everyone's tired, the train's oversold as fucking always. So I go sit down next to a chap, and he's sitting in a reserved seat, and I've picked that seat because it's not reserved. Happens a few moments later, a woman comes up and she says, "Oh, excuse me, that's my reserved seat." So we both stand up and shuffle out. She goes in, sits in her reserved seat, but then that fucker takes my seat. He just sits right down where I just was. And this is a crisis of etiquette on British trains. So
you had to get up because his seat was the window seat and you were the aisle seat. So for her to get to her legitimate reserved seat, you had to get up to let him out. Yep. And he used the opportunity to just steal.
Yes. Just fucking audaciously fucking take that space from me. And I screamed, I just said, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like that. It just came out of me. There was like, it bypassed all of my normal kind of like social norms checks. And,
did you fail like a mitigate volume check?
Yeah, but everything. I failed every fucking check. And I just yelled at this guy on the train, and, he started just babbling like, "I was here first, I was on the train first." I was like, "Oh, that's no fucking excuse." I didn't say that to him. This thing starts
not how the rules work.
Yeah. You broke the rules. You did something wrong. But then I realized like how like, that moment of terrifying self-awareness where it's almost like you step outside of your body and it's like, what are you doing on this train? And I sort of just wandered down the coach and felt fucking furious for hours.
Is that the shivers skill in Disco Elysium? The one where you sort of see everything from like a zoomed out perspective?
Tom Senior is also now moving to Canada.
So I've been in the reverse of that where
you did this crime.
No, so
what the fuck am I doing?
So I was the man, right?
Yes.
And so we both had to get out, and then I let that person go. Like I sort of motioned for the person who was in the free seat to take the one I was in, and that person said, "No, it's fine."
Because they understood the rules.
Wait, Alex, were you in the reserved seat originally?
So I was in the reserved seat. Which is the window seat, and Yeah, like, so we both got up to let the person into the reserved seat. I was probably not going to get my seat.
Yeah.
And that person who was in the unreserved seat said, you take, because obviously I was there first. In the same,
I assume
in the same
you
dynamic.
forced them into the seats.
Yeah, I looked at them
point.
like really like.
What the fuck are you talking about? Get in that damn
I'm
seat.
about to say this. No, like, but that is the right thing because morally it probably is the first person, but it doesn't work like that.
Not morally.
No.
First person.
No.
Emotionally.
No, Alex, no.
He made his choice. He sat in a reserved seat when there was a non-reserved one
Exactly.
available. If he wanted a non-reserved seat, you sit in the non-reserved seat.
Hold on.
Maybe he was thinking, if I sit in an outside seat with an empty
they
seat
would
next to
better
me,
get-
then I'm the bigger twat.
Yeah,
Really, that's also
somebody-
bad.
Much smaller twat.
I agree.
What was the reserved system? Was it with a ticket thing or was it with a little screen
Lights.
thing?
It was little lights. It was completely clear. There.
Right, it was clear.
It was clear. He gambled. He lost.
Yeah.
And as I said in a Slack message, he should have retired from the battlefield like a gentleman instead of having this ridiculous confrontation with a very sweaty man.
Tom, what would you have done if he had like gestured for you to take the seat? Like,
I'd be like, well, that's what
Take
you
it.
expected.
Of course.
mate.
Fucking of course.
Get out of it. I think that's reasonable, but I think
I would have said thank you for
And
no
then
reason.
then he would have limped really painfully off up the aisle.
Yeah.
Weeping slightly, inadvertently, but, trying to maintain
know
his
what?
dignity.
my piles, he says.
You know what? If he'd have said,
Yes, Piles is better off standing up.
if he'd have like said, mate, please do you mind if I take the seat? I would have let him have it. That's what's so fucked about this. Like a little bit of courtesy and just it was the audacity and expectation.
What I was trying to determine is whether in that moment you were capable of setting up a rally. Because a traditional rally is kind of the normal outcome where he says, oh, do you want to take the seat? And you say, no, don't worry about it. You were here first. Because you don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But you understand what his logic might be.
You see, you're a better person than me in that.
You basically both make the case for each other to each other.
Yeah.
And then neither of you agree. And then probably the first person to go sits down.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So what you're saying is he failed his rhetoric check and Tom failed all of his checks.
I think Tom was in the right, but he just felt like a volume check, right?
no, it was the overreaction that was I felt very guilty about later because don't be the guy shouting on a train ever. Like,
Yeah, well, it was like a D10 roll for whether what level you deliver this message at, because like that could have been a, hey, what are you doing? Like it could have been a, hey man, like this is an unreserved seat. You took a reserved one. What are you doing? But it kind of like came out at 9. Right? Like
it would have been worse if it was quieter. If I'd have sort of leaned in and went, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like that would have actually been much worse. I think.
yeah, oh yeah.
So I wouldn't
don't sound like you're going to murder him.
I
Like,
know, right? You don't-
There's so many. I love that this anecdote has come out of the podcast. There are so many situations where I wish I could summon you to say that to people.
yeah, well, like a Final Fantasy summon.
Yeah.
Very long animation starts as Tom.
from orbit just nukes him. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, the damage number just comes up like WTF.
Did you see him as you disembarked?
What's that? Sorry.
Did you see him again as you disembarked?
No, I didn't. We didn't make eye contact. He seemed alarmed. But the thing is, I'm not like a larger, imposing or intimidating person at all. But if I'd somehow bullied him out of that seat, imagine that poor woman having to sit next to me, a shouting, yelling bully for the rest of the journey.
I feel the opposite. Like, if I was her, I would be like, oh my god, I gotta sit next to this fucking seat-stealing, awful prick.
Lizard man. This lizard fiend.
What would have been
Human
great
skin.
what would have been great if he'd gone, I'm so sorry, you're right, and he'd moved, and then he'd looked at the empty seat and said, I can't take this now. And so you'd left as well. And she was just sat there next to nobody.
She puts her bag there, which is also a crime, by the way.
That is also a crime.
Oh, well, what if she got into the seats and you're both about to get into the fight over it, and then she put the bag down there.
Denied.
So neither of you could sit
Denied. Don't go on British public transport unless you're British and understand the very complex.
Well, it's just, or never be, I mean, so you failed at don't be the first person to get angry about something.
Yes.
But the other trick, the thing the other guy failed is don't be the first person to make a decision.
there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right? Like
You've got to negotiate.
There's no
However
negotiation.
fleetingly,
you've got to at least make the overture. You've got to go like,
I'm willing to discuss. I don't want to back down.
I do not.
You were talking about the ideal short form Disco Elysium game. Here we are. This is it.
Just one seat on a train.
Yeah.
This is my new interactive fiction game.
This is a great jam.
This is Game Jam, James.
We should jam this.
Jam this. Oh, that was a diversion. But I feel better. That was cathartic. Kind of like saying it into a microphone that millions of people might listen to. Millions?
Millions?
Not millions. Not millions.
It's not. Good. So, any other games people want to talk about?
I was going to mention one very briefly because I haven't played enough of it thing, but it's just really interested me because I haven't played a game quite like it. It's called Radio Commander, and it is set in the Vietnam War, and you are a radio commander, which means that you have a map and you have a view outside your tent of kind of soldiers doing push-ups and things, and you have a telephone.
None of these things are a
More
radio.
push-ups.
You don't get to order them around at all.
What?
Instead,
You
What kind of
can
commander are you?
call up your troops who are out on the map, like in the Vietnam, and you ask them where they are. You ask them, tell them where to go. You ask them what their status is. You ask them whether they can see enemy enemies, and you're marking them map as you go along. Sort of keep piecing together what they're doing.
Oh, so you're not visually seeing where they are.
Not seeing where they are. You
You're
just have
being
a
told.
map, and you can
Oh
put
my
markers
God.
on it, and you can move them around. And you can draw on the map arrows to remind yourself what's happening. And you are, like, there are conversations that start up as you're kind of doing. I'm not sure they're very well done, but like the idea is cool. And they get into a firefight, and suddenly it's a strategy game where you can't see what's happening. All you know is where they reported they were last time you checked. And it's pretty cool. There's a game where I liked, again, very much the idea of years back in 95 or something like that, called Pacific Air War, which I think there are games kind of similar to it, but basically it's a game where you're either the Americans or the Japanese in the Pacific War. World War II, and you are in command of a fleet, and you've got to wipe out the other fleet, and you don't know where they are in the Pacific. So you're setting sail with your groups of ships, and you're sending out planes to spot them. You send them out in fan shapes,
Like
and
complicated battleship.
and what you'll get is like from what they see, a heading and their speed, so you can kind of guess where they've gone by the time you get to them. And like, it's this sort of cat and mouse where you don't know where they are. And I always found that idea of like, there's, when in a normal strategy game, when you can see stuff moving around, there is an awful lot of mystery. Like, and there's often not all that much magic because they sometimes move in slightly weird ways and don't behave in particularly kind of cogent or credible ways. But when you don't know, suddenly you can pull all sorts of fucking stuff on them. So the Viet Cong, what are they doing when you're kind of like, why were they going northeast? Like, were they trying to flank you? Did they know about you? Was there another way? Like, is there another group out there that's going to get you on the way back? So you're actually quite worried because you're always continually checking in with them to see that, status okay? And where are you? Are you nearly back? Are you nearly back? And, it's really nicely done. The only problem is like, the dialogue, so this is kind of irrelevant to whether it's any good or not, but it's not made by Americans. It's all American acted and things, but the voice work isn't great, and definitely the script isn't that good. Like, so it's like the first couple of missions is all I played. Definitely does the standard things that you do when you're doing Vietnam drama. They do the kind of like, why are we doing helping these people? They just hate us. And it's like, I don't know. I guess you have to do that kind of thing with the Vietnam kind of drama, but at the same time, you've got to be smart about it. And this isn't smart. It just feels wrong, and the voice work isn't good enough to support a bad script in the first place. But like the idea of patchy information and then conversations with people like in the field, you never see them, and like you can develop relationships with them. It's really cool, and like it's really spare, like and at the end of the mission you get to see exactly what happened, so you see all of the different markers and where they moved it precisely.
Cool.
And it's pretty cool. Like I will play more and probably talk about it more, but
what's that one called again?
Radio Commander.
That's right.
Yeah.
Reminds me of kind of like dark mode Frozen Sea for instance.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
That kind of stuff. There's also like early, really, really gritty war sims like Theatre of War series that also take Fog of War really deadly seriously.
Oh, right.
And does actually like how far an infantry unit could possibly see. And you might get blips of info as you're moving into a town, but you don't necessarily know where they're going to end up. So it's that second guessing, moving into uncertain space that's part of the drama of the game. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. It's very organic game, really analog game.
It also made me think of Ruse.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck, yeah.
RTS with
Unloved.
Underrated though.
where you could sort of like, you could place a decoy unit or a real unit and the enemy didn't know which one it was which and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Ruse was Amplitude Origins. That was the team that absconded from Ubisoft to make all the Endless games. So
Yeah, right.
hence why it had legit strategy chops.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that's where it came from.
It was Ubisoft Paris, I think.
Right.
And, or at least, it was a French Ubisoft studio and then the people became Amplitude.
I remember when coming to visit the office. You wrote about that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I did, yeah. I didn't know how the game worked at all when I wrote about it. It was mostly bullshit.
The great underrated RTS series is Eugen Systems games. If you just look Google Eugen Systems, you'll find their sort of kind of NATO era war games that are very, very massive scale. Really, really cool.
Have there been any good games about the Vietnam War?
Do you mean good in, like, representative or good as in, like, you know, they play Creedence Clearwater Revival and you're in a helicopter?
I mean, the former, I guess.
Like, for example, Bad Company 2 had a Vietnam expansion was amazing, but not at all respectful of that.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at something that really is in some way insightful about the
Magic of Vietnam.
So, the what?
Magic of Vietnam. Trod the line a little bit with some elements.
I forgot that existed.
Yeah,
wow. I forgot they did that.
Yeah, God.
What is that? Hang on, I've missed something here.
There was an expansion for Magica called Magic of Vietnam.
Oh shit, there was, yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, right.
Brilliantly, but also
Right. Well, so
very bad
there's
taste.
a real crucial distinction here. Are you talking about Vietnam, the war movie genre, or Vietnam, the war? Which
the war, really? I mean,
yeah.
There's not actually that many. I mean, there's a COD that is.
I think
Black Ops.
Black Ops, yeah.
Black Ops.
I mean, but it's.
Yeah, I think something that would be interesting is like, so I lived in Vietnam for a while and, obviously I'm trying to, one of the things that was interesting to me was, and I don't want to say this is universally true, but the sense that what is perceived in cinema and in the West is, you know, the Vietnam War, which is the war with, you know, between the United States and the South Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong, is really one of several wars that dovetailed into each other, which have their origins in Vietnam as a French colony and the collapse of that and so on. And so, and obviously things like the real fucking long edition of Apocalypse Now touch somewhat on some of that by just acknowledging that, you know, some of that stuff, but not a lot. And so I think, like, you know, a good representative Vietnam game would really be a simulation to some extent of a very a complex and very compromising moment in like Cold War geopolitics, basically. Like the decision.
I don't think you could. These days, I don't think you could tell it without being from the Vietnamese.
Yes, I think it would have to be from the Vietnamese perspective.
And that definitely has fucking not been done in any Western.
Right. And that would be a really interesting perspective to explore from a few different sides. Like, you know, it's an interesting perspective from the North Vietnamese perspective. It's an interesting,
but it's weird how it's died out of even like a mainstream American, language to just discuss it. Like, I mean, Platoon was like the last kind of significant of Vietnam film I can think of. And then, you know, where'd you go from that? It's, you know,
well, if you know, the thing is,
there's I mean, it's not fiction, but the documentary, Ken, you know, the big
Loach.
No, it's a big documentary. It's on Netflix and it is very, 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 very long. I think every episode is 2 hours and there are 6 of them.
Oh my God.
It's, what is the name of the documentary, technique where the camera pans into a picture and sort of goes, moves in, zooms and pans? It's a specific word and specific term. That is the maker of this series. Like, it's the name of a man, and this is that.
I know what you mean, and I don't know what that's called.
Anyway, it's very, very, very good, and it is very clear about the fact that the American-Vietnam War is only part of a great big thing. But
I think, like, it's interesting, like, in terms of the subsequent sort of, it'd be interesting to think about I think you're right, games haven't really addressed Vietnam as a setting much lately. I think one thing that's interesting about that is maybe people are a little bit more sensitive about the fact that it's not just a cinematic genre.
Right, yeah.
You know, like it was a thing that happened. The other thing is that
one would hope, but I think that's probably not the case.
Right. But also I think, man, this is a bit of a big point for 2 glasses of whiskey, but like,
go for it.
There's so much subsequent pop culture addresses Vietnam one way or another. Right. From in every possible genre. Right. Like, you can make arguments for everything from Star Wars to Dawn of the Dead as, kind of responses to particular kinds of, the sort of lasting effect of that war on the psyche of American pop culture, basically. I would argue that it has been supplanted in the popular imagination in terms of its sort of cultural significance by 9/11 and the War on Terror.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly the point at which it disappears from the kind of common argot. It's weird.
Or it becomes, it has a brief moment as a kind of retro sort of cool thing almost. Like, do you remember when it was all Jimi Hendrix and Creedence and helicopters? And then it goes to being everything is 9/11 imagery, whether you're talking about cinema or you're talking about games or the consequences, the War on Terror and that whole thing, right? Like it's, where if you're talking about, sort of, powerful or imperialist powers entrenched in endless sort of conflicts, the frame of reference for that has moved from Vietnam to the Middle East. And, the sort of,
well, it's interesting. The reason I mention this is actually because in the back of my head, I was thinking about the Punisher series, because, Rich Stanton lent me the Garth Ennis, Punisher books. And a lot of them, I appreciate this is a bit of a diversion. A lot of them are about, Vietnam, and the Punisher is super old in these books, by the way. So he was like a young man in Vietnam. And, they are Garth Ennis books, and there's a lot of good stuff in them and really, really terrible Garth Ennis-y stuff in them. But at their best, they are talking about Vietnam, and there's some of the kind of the most clear-sighted and interesting things about how Vietnam affected people, essentially, in Valley Forge, I think is like the kind of the ending series of comics about the Punisher, and they're really, really, really good. And that's what kind of just popped into my head when you started talking about this. I was thinking, wow, God, yeah. Why hasn't that subject really been delved into in greater depth by games in pop culture? Because there's a really rich mine. But it's also interesting that, Punisher updated. Oh, he's a Afghanistan war hero.
Yeah, right. And it sort of makes, they did exactly the same thing with Iron Man.
Obviously they can't make these people like fucking 70
right,
or whatever.
But nonetheless,
but
right,
at the same time,
the same switch takes place kind of quote unquote logically.
But it also means that those histories have sort of been erased in a weird way.
Right. I could, I think you could talk around this for hours. Like, it'd be interesting, like, because they just made a new Rambo film. And like, that is the sort of,
the original Rambo is like,
apex, if only this guy was here, kind of Vietnam fantasy. Whereas, like, if you contrast Rambo and Predator, those are the two kind of other sides.
Yeah, the first Rambo film is about PTSD.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. The first one is, I'm thinking of subsequent Rambo.
But subsequent Rambos are, why don't we parachute Rambo into Afghanistan and he can help the Mujahideen destroy, the communists? Which is fucking insane.
Yeah,
so
right.
Look at that it's like now.
Hang on a minute, which means that Rambo is basically like the key to all of it, because like he was in Vietnam and then he basically caused all of the Middle East problems.
Right. Well, God, I guess
is Rambo the text for all of the current moments?
Teenager.
Well, he's the teen. He is the teen. Like, well, he is sort of
talk about a teenage, Well, Rambo in the first
Rambo, America's adolescence.
He's had some setbacks. But we can all see the good in him.
Right.
If only he'd come out of the fucking forest.
So, like, So the message of Rambo, and I appreciate we're so fucking miles off piece to this point.
God, yes.
The message of Rambo is it'll definitely work this time, right? Like we dropped this man into this country. Now he's traumatized. Now we're going to hoist him back up and we're going to drop him into this one. But guess what? All of that trauma is actually strength, and it's going to definitely blow up the USSR this time.
What's the story of the new one? Isn't he just
isn't he like,
he's
actually,
at home.
I haven't seen it.
I've heard that it is migrants are bad, but I don't know.
It looks like he's defending his homestead from somewhere, and that is a whole wealth of like, like where does US pop culture locate its kind of great danger?
Homesteads.
Exactly.
The people who go to homesteads.
Right, like the sort of the, apocalyptic gotta defend my house thing, which is fucking everywhere now, from Logan to Walking Dead to everything. Right? Like, man, I said this on Twitter, but it's a fucking crime they called that film Rambo Last Blood and not Rambo number 5. Where he could have had different guns called like Monica and Rita. And Lou Bega's there.
Cameo.
Exactly.
37 minutes in.
Could have been film of the year.
Is that a thing? Film of the year?
Game of the year.
I guess there were, like, Rambo 1 was a trauma film, and also Jacob's Ladder was as well, but reflecting on the Vietnam War, which is, like, there was some reflection in pop culture.
Oh, definitely.
It stopped. I think that's your point.
Yeah,
like
right. Yeah, but like there absolutely was, but it's also where that lens is focused, and there may well be Vietnam War fiction that doesn't address this, but yeah.
I think, but going back to the games.
Oh,
do you know what has a bad Vietnam flashback?
All right, yeah,
could
be a format in which you do it well. It could be.
But it sounds like this one doesn't, right?
It doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it's good. I mean, it's not doing bad stuff. It's just not doing anything well.
It is why it is such an interesting thing, right? Because there is a structural thing about the nature of that conflict which cannot be expressed by first-person shooters.
Yeah,
like the ground combat.
The thing that famously didn't end that war. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and like, I feel like there is an opening there to explain and look at that conflict, which is just not ever seemingly. I think interrogated.
There is an issue in that it really didn't seem a fun one. Didn't seem a fun one at all.
Yeah, no.
And like,
right, but yeah, I mean, which
is to say that like any
nobody can win it for sure.
You can only have a grim game.
Not to pick up this thing and kind of limply dribble it back into the net, but
but that's what we do.
But this is kind of one of the reasons that one of the answers to this is sort of gestured at by Disco Elysium, which is like that is a game about a society and in the crises it goes through.
We live in a society, Chris.
We do. We live in a society. In that game, you live in a society that is rebuilding it after a foreign power violently kind of opposes a revolution on quote unquote your behalf. And it just is. It's not a big fight that you get to have. It's not, you can't, fight the coolest moments. Or like of that war, you just sort of live with the aftermath of it. And some people don't care and some people do. And some people are kids, some people are shitty teens and for whom it doesn't matter a single thing apart from in broader socioeconomic ways that they don't consider at all. And some people are obsessed with it. And that is the truth of this, right? Like that is the ultimate truth of these things after the fact. So something like that would be a way more interesting to address those kinds of conflicts as they become more complicated than video games typically do, because video games are better suited to space war, where the baddies are a big space goblin or something. Like it's what they're good at.
God, I really love Destiny.
Me too. The reason I don't have anything to talk about this week, apart from Disco Elysium, is all I've fucking done is play Destiny.
I played quite a lot of Destiny, and I just thought, why the fuck am I not playing Disco Elysium? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing another Vexing?
Destiny is a soothing, hypnotic thing that just sort of carries you along, and Disco Elysium is quite a challenging thing that forces you to engage with it.
Yeah, that's what it is. I have needed to switch my head off this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, other than the fact that it's a lot of reading, I found it really addictive. Like, it was quite easygoing, really. Because one of the things
really is.
Another impression I had that was kind of wrong was I thought it was going to be intimidating and daunting and difficult. Like, I don't actually play a lot of character RPGs like this. Like, I tried Pillars of Eternity and I kind of bounced off it, and usually there's just too much complexity, there's too much expected of me as the player.
Yeah.
They think too highly of me.
Well, there's so much telling you about
Yeah, and this actually, if you go and try and create a custom character, that is kind of overwhelming and a bit messy. But after that, from then on, it's actually really accessible and just kind of, the dialogue is so like funny and
it does drag you.
There's so much to it that
I'd
it's
be
not
fine if I
mature.
started it, but it's the kind of
you have some progress, but you can't carry on right because you're
going to start again. Just kind of
I will say, I do wish less of it was voiced. Might be a controversial opinion.
Yeah,
the voice acting
I
isn't
agree.
great, and out of respect, I feel I need to listen to every line that is voiced all the way through. But normally you can kind of motor through it at the speed you can read.
There's like some of it is decent and some of it is really like, oh my god, who did this? To the point that and I've never done this before, but there was one time where it was like a new character, quite late in the game. Their voicing was so like, oh my god, this is not someone who's ever acted before. I don't think it actually made me think, I think even I can do this better. I think I'm going to try. I just tried reading the paragraph aloud. Can I do it better than this? Obviously, I can't judge. But I'm like, well, I don't know. It's not as bad. Never had that thought before in my life.
the music.
Music is
real nice.
Yeah, it's really good.
Also real nice.
Yeah.
Smell?
Hard to say.
Normal.
Lot of descriptions of smells. Definitely
top. Tip top.
Yep, gave me the potential for sure.
Oh yeah, but it's in a complicated.
What about
Outer Wilds?
Wilds. Yeah, I was stumbling over that.
We all got it right.
It?
No one has to drink.
Don't worry, Outer Wilds is not in contention. But Slay the Spire is.
Oh
shit.
How many years has that been?
It technically came out this year.
Actually, I think it has meaningful competition.
I think,
like Tom, I would be surprised if you picked Slay the Spire over Outer Wilds.
Yeah, I would be too, because I prefer Outer Wilds. But like, yeah, I think, didn't I pick Slay the Spire for last year or something?
Probably, yeah.
We've got to pick a year for that game.
Yeah.
But, if you go by playtime, it always wins. It's, it's probably outpaced Spelunky now for me. I've played them so much. And I do still love it, and I'm playing the new character still, and it's still not finished. They're changing it all the time, and it's really interesting seeing how it's evolving, and there's new mechanics in there that are really cool. But yeah, just in terms of like the fondness in my heart, Outer Wilds definitely wins.
I just realized that one of those, like voices in the 24 matrix of podcast voices is talk about Slay the Spire.
I've fallen prey to that many times.
Yeah, exactly.
And will again.
There's so much to it.
Look, I saw an opportunity and I took it.
And also Pip is here.
Hello, Pip.
Hello.
Hello. We've sort of jumped forward in time now, very briefly, or for however long we choose to allow us to step aside from a rapidly deteriorating podcast that occurred yesterday in my timeline, and to step into the bright, almost too bright, today, where we can catch up with you, Pip, about what you've been up to, and maybe give the audience a little bit of a break before we descend into questions. Which is going to be a bit of a journey this week, I'm afraid.
I mean, you wobbled home at a late hour.
I like to think of this as like the equivalent of one of those, it's happening in the middle, but like kind of like one of those Star Trek cold opens where it's like the ship explodes or something and it's like 2 days earlier and you find out, oh, that's actually fine or something. You know what I mean?
I mean, is this just your proof that you survived? How bad did it get?
I will say I've edited... this is episode 300 and I've edited, as far as the website's concerned, 235. But that includes all the blood bonds. It's probably closer to 200 of these. And I think this is the messiest outro I have ever heard.
Oh, wow.
So you got that to look forward to, I think. Or stop now. Or stop when Pip's done. We're giving people a jumping off point. They don't do this during, like, long films, really, or anything like that. So.
Maybe they should.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have done that in the middle of Titanic instead of letting you go to the loo.
Well, let all the people off the ship halfway, that would have been...
Well, I don't know. Maybe that would have been worse, because then you'd have just been stranded, like, the Carpathia wouldn't have been around, would it?
To be fair to them, they kind of did let all the people off the boat halfway, and that was the whole problem. They would have much preferred to go all the way to New York.
I mean, but, like, Oh, do you remember back in the day when people were allowed a little bit of a break when films were interminably long? Because it wasn't the norm. Yeah. 80 to 90 minutes is an acceptable length for a film, and I will not hear anything said otherwise. If you go longer than that, you need an editor. Quite frankly, nobody has anything to say that lasts longer than that.
The new, I saw when I bought tickets, the new Star Wars is about 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I'll be leaving after 90 minutes. Because if they can't get to the point, then, you know, that's already longer than my concentration span, so.
Understandable. I will stay.
Maybe I should see it in 2 sessions. Like, one will be 90 minutes and the other one will be, you know, maybe an overlapping section. You know, like, I'll come in 90 minutes before the end. Like, get caught up on a little bit of it. And
someone will come over and say, you know, Mum, your film is starting. No, get me in an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
They know what they've done.
I know. I'll have this cup of tea and then I will be in.
Good.
I'm glad we've got that sorted.
Well, what's the acceptable length for a podcast?
Oh, no. See, I'm not even going to listen to this one. It's too long.
Maybe this is a bit of a dangerous question. How many of them do you listen to?
Oh, none of them. I don't like to be reminded of what I've said. I used to listen to them, but then I got weirded out because I fell asleep listening to them, and then it was like there were all these people that I knew that were sort of in my room but not. And then I'd wake up confused because it would be like I'd seen my friends and I hadn't. So I had to stop. But everyone else should listen. That's no excuse. I can't imagine you've all been going around making friends over the place.
Mid-pod intervention.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Have I made this unlistenable? Like,
No,
we've already advised people to stop listening at least 3 times. Right.
I think, I think they should definitely keep listening. And also, I'm sorry.
Oh dear.
It's probably fine. It's probably not the worst it's ever been.
Should I listen?
Oh no. That's, you know, we'll probably have a different title for the episode, but 300, probably not the worst it's ever been, might be the tagline for this. But the reason we're doing this, the reason we're sat on my office floor on a Friday afternoon to talk to you, Pip, is so that we're all here. The gang's all here on this 300th episode. What have you been up to in the world of computer games or otherwise? There's no rules anymore. And if there were, I wouldn't be the person to enforce them.
Well, I mean, let's talk computer games.
Sure.
It has been a Teamfight Tactics kind of a year, I would say, and with some light showers of Animal Crossing mixed in, I would say.
With the weather.
Well... But
you played a lot of Teamfight Tactics,
now
or as
look.
it was once called. What was it that you called it when you'd forgotten what it was called?
Tank Top Fortress.
Tank Top Fortress.
Look, all of the main letters from the initials were there, and that was as good a hit rate as I was ever going to get that day, I think. I was very tired.
But you played, like, legitimately a ton of that now.
Yes, but then they're going to go and introduce seasons, and the first one is Rise of the Elements, and then all of my knowledge will be for naught, Chris. Naught.
Surely that's not the case. Surely you can adapt.
I mean, yes, but I mean, also they are introducing a whole load of very different, like at the moment, the roles and the origins are set as particular things, and then you look at the new cards, the new, the ways the champions are organised, and there is basically an explosion of new people, and the ones that you know already have different roles now, and different synergies, and there are, you know, like... Druids don't exist at the moment.
What?
There's going to be druids. Then, you know, like light and ocean and all of this stuff. That's now going to have to be remembered. Like, it's getting dangerously close to a MOBA in terms of things that I have to learn and pay attention to. And I'm not okay.
But you've internalised so much info already. What's more info?
But it's different info. This is like finding out that Columbus didn't sail in whenever he sailed, which is not a good example because now I can't remember the song. What was it, 1400 and something 92? 22?
I don't know.
Now look, it rhymes with ocean blue. But anyway, it's like finding out that it was in 93 instead. And that
it's
also,
not Ocean Gree.
Well, yeah, and also that Columbus was actually Pope Pius or something, you know, like suddenly everyone's put on a different costume and is insisting that they were always from there. And it's very annoying. I'm not okay.
So it feels like there's like a cap on how much you
I shouldn't
want
have
a game
picked...
to ask you to learn.
Well, I just ask that it doesn't throw everything out of the window all of the time. That would be nice. Because, I mean, it's one of the reasons that I tapped out of MOBAs. Like, it was just like a homework. Also, I shouldn't have picked Columbus as an example because he was a dick. But yeah, like, I don't know. It's, why does anything have to change?
So, but you probably are going to keep playing Teamfight Tactics, right?
Yes.
And you definitely got...
I'm trying to currently get my honour level up so that I can play it on the public beta environment because my honour isn't high enough for me to download that client.
And honour is your social rating?
It's like, it's the thing that says that you're a decent human being in games and not a complete asshole. So it's the thing, you know, where you get like upvoted by people at the end for like shot calling or for not tilting or, you know, for just basically being a nice person. And to do that, I had to boot up things that weren't Teamfight Tactics, and that involved a lot of ARAM, and I am not okay because someone told me I was stupid. And I was like, oh, now I feel sad because I came here to be good and to get good points, and now I'm being told I'm stupid, so that person's definitely not going to give me good points. And like, I didn't want to say anything like positive because I didn't want people to be like, why is stupid Lucian being positive? Like, oh no. Like, I don't know. I became very self-conscious and I didn't want to participate anymore. So now I've got to wait even longer for trying to learn new things about these characters and like have all of my previous enjoyment and knowledge and learning thrown back in my face, Chris. Like, it's like they want you to fail. And I don't know why people aren't rooting for me.
It's a very personal journey you've been on.
Well, I just, like, imagine if you had gone to the trouble of actually learning something.
Right.
Like JavaScript. And then they phoned you.
What a weird example, but sure.
Well, it's what you've learned recently, and you've put a lot of effort in. And what if they phoned you and said, we're not doing that anymore? Like, up is down, backwards is forwards, like, there's a new, like, moon involved. I don't know, I don't understand JavaScript, as is probably
what you just described
clear.
as Destiny.
Now, okay, fine. Then Destiny, you boot up your hunter, and your hunter is suddenly a warlock. And won't let you show off in your horrible hunter way. How would you feel about that? Bad is how you feel, Chris. Bad.
No, because I'm very forgiving, maybe too much so, of things I've already agreed that I like.
What do you mean?
So if they did that, I'd be like, well, I disagree with it, but I won't make a fuss. That'd probably be how I'd react to that, because
Would you keep playing it, though? Would you feel sad?
Well, it depends exactly what the changes were, but change itself is not bad.
Change is always bad, Chris. Except for things that suit me. Like if it was, I don't know, it'll probably be great and I'll probably have a lot more fun because right now I'm playing in a very sort of standardized way that is winning repeatedly. And I feel very good about that because I'm winning, but it's also not particularly challenging. And so I would actually like it to change up a bit. It's just that like changing entirely feels a bit scary.
I get that. I was going to ask about that actually, like whether
I'm finally good at something.
I know you're a monster. I keep walking in, you've soloed, the entire game or something.
Do you know what's happening?
No.
Okay.
You just seem to win a lot. But so that was the question I was going to ask. Like, so if you feel like you've solved the current auto battler sort of formula a bit, is it exciting to you that you might have to embark on that journey of solving it again, or is it like is it like a household chore where like the kitchen will always slowly get messy over time and it will always need cleaning again?
So I think what I liked was the cadence of adjustments. It's like with,
Right.
if you think about the little tweaks that you get to games like balance patches or, maybe slightly more substantial updates that tweak a bunch of things, and so it changes the flavour of the thing a little bit. It brings other skills into focus, or it refreshes the experience slightly, but it doesn't undo everything that you've learned about how the cadence of the thing is played. It doesn't, and there's a chance that this might just be utterly and unequivocally positive. It's just that I've learned so much about this game and I've tried so hard and like I've genuinely enjoyed it, and then seeing this thing on the horizon that might be amazing but might also just throw everything that I suddenly got good at out of the window. And it was like, I think something that maybe underlined that feeling was playing Aram, and
So for podcast.
yeah, it's a one lane, all random, all mid thing where you get assigned a random hero.
And it's League of Legends, not Teamfight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're both League of Legends.
Right, but I'm just saying so people can visualise if they haven't played
So
it.
you get a champion and you just barrel down this snowy one lane thing, just like trying to kill other people and taking out their turrets, and like a mini version of the Nexus. So it's basically a very streamlined and concentrated League experience, but I use it mostly for like learning stuff or for tooling around, because it's shorter and people treat it more throwaway. Like I find that there's less of a chance of people being jerks or that toxicity, because it's shorter and it's less consequential, like you random stuff. But even playing that, being called stupid rather than people sort of being annoyed that I'm crushing them, or like, I've found the chat in Teamfight a lot more, not necessarily measured, but I think the strongest criticism that I've had there has just been, oh, you got really lucky with 3-star champions this early in the game, like that's not fair kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the other stuff, it immediately just felt personal and it felt worrying. It felt, I felt really like on edge for the whole thing. Was I gonna get?
Because you're in there to get something as well. That you particularly want.
And also just getting characters that I wasn't familiar with really and haven't played in years at this point, and trying to desperately remember how they work, and then finding out that actually they've been slightly redone and it doesn't even work like that anymore, and or even just the fact that people would quit out when I didn't trade. Like I got Varus and I was like, oh, actually I do know how to play this, and then someone was like, will you trade with me for their thing? And I was like, I didn't know how to play their thing well, and so they rage quit. I got booted back to matchmaking, and I was like, I'm just too tired for this. Like, I don't want to grind this just to get access to the thing that I do want. And even then, it's only because I'm a bit worried about whether I'll be any good at it,
Right. It's funny because, like,
I want to try.
It'd be interesting to dig into, like, because, I think it's maybe fair to say that I'm not sure a new game has stuck like Teamfight Tactics has for a fair old while. There's a few I could name. I think Slime Ranch would be one of them. Subnautica would be the other. But you know what I mean? It feels like you are not someone who picks up a new game every week and plays it every week. You are someone who picks up a game for a fair old while and then... And it's I think, maybe with Slime Rancher and Subnautica you can point to the sort of gardening aspect or the sort of exploration collection aspect, which is also common with Animal Crossing and a few other things. But this feels like... very different to the sorts of games that I have known you to get super into. So interesting to figure out what it is about that formula that resonates quite so strongly with you.
I think it's partly because it's a world that I'm familiar with, because I've always been fond of League of Legends, just in terms of even its colour palette, I find more appealing than Dota, just because I like brighter colours, I think.
I do love a moody pastel, me.
And so it's I find it quite cartoony and uplifting in that way. And so it's a map that I naturally want to spend a bit more time with. And I think as well, because I knew so many people who played Dota and who were good at Dota. And so League was somewhere that I could actually be on my own, you know, and figure stuff out, but not be beholden to other people or not continually measure myself up against them. Because I don't know if I've really talked about this on the podcast, but Dota was actually a really weirdly toxic thing for me, especially towards the end, because it fed into all of my insecurities about whether I was okay in this profession, whether I was, you know, it was like, there was very real, like, not exactly imposter syndrome. It was, I was into very different games, and I couldn't figure out a way to make that feel okay. That's not quite imposter syndrome. It's more about just not feeling accepted or not feeling like the things that I valued were valued in that way. And so Dota became this thing that I was always very interested in esports, but more in the way of like the business of it and the human side and the community and things. And all of the writing about it seemed to gravitate towards things like play-by-play stuff, or like analysis of different skills, or the team compositions, and, you know, all of that very mechanical stuff that wasn't as interesting to me. And so I just felt like I was constantly stuck in a world of exam revision and trying to unpick the stuff that didn't come naturally, because people would be annoyed if I wrote about the things that did, or that, you know, I remember I played sometimes, and then someone that I actually don't speak to anymore, but like they popped up on my Steam chat afterwards and told me what items I should have been building, because it turned out they'd been spectating my game, and it was things like that just constantly made it feel like it wasn't okay that I was there, or that the way that I played it was right, or, you know, all of that stuff. And so I think that in turn made League more appealing, just because it wasn't that.
Right.
And people, you know, like I've got like 3 friends on it and none of them play anymore. So,
and
like,
I suppose
yeah.
Teamfight is also itself a very specifically, not a solitary experience, because it's a multiplayer thing, but...
Well, it's not, apart from the carousel bit where you pick a champion as they're wandering around in the middle of this, like, void, none of it is reflexes. None of it is, you know, that moment-to-moment, like, reaction play. It's, you know, you have time to think about things, or you have time to experiment a little bit, or it's... There's a lot of thinking and there's a lot of layers, and I was so delighted when I realised that I was actually responding to what other people were doing. Like, I think at the beginning you're just so overwhelmed by the number of things to do and the spaces on the board and where do you put things and why do you put things there. And then there was one game where I think I was on 4 health and the other person was on 90 something, and we were the only 2 left. And I realised that I was switching up my positioning and switching up my
I think I watched
my
this,
people
or I watched a win like this.
And items and things. And I managed to win that. I managed to bring them down from like nearly 100 health while I was on this knife edge. Like, I couldn't lose a single game, and I won. And that was like the greatest feeling, and I felt like that must be what you get when you turn a game around in Dota or something, you know?
Right, well that's the thing. I mean, so, you know, and I think you're right to draw attention to the sort of... Well, auto battlers are almost more board game like than almost a lot of things I could name, including a lot of turn-based strategy games or things like that, because
there isn't an AI element, really. Well, there is. It's in terms of how the individual characters act when the battle is playing out. And that's the stuff that a board game would really struggle to resolve quickly, right? Like, if you were rolling dice for each individual character and their attacks and who they choose to target, it would take a million years and you wouldn't do it. But the actual kind of cadence of it, where you're sort of, it feels a lot like, board games that you like it's got a set collection aspect to it, right? Like it's got a passing card.
Love a set collection.
Right. It's got like passing cards around there's a deck essentially being passed around.
Probability.
Yeah. There's card counting, probability, and a bunch of other things about it that, feel a little bit underrepresented in other genres actually. And given that the genre itself is such a sort of hybrid, and given it comes from MOBAs, people maybe look to that first. I think it's actually way closer to, I don't know, it's got the feeling of a solitaire game to me in a weird way, even though it's definitely not it's not solitary technically.
Yeah, there are other people there, but you are definitely playing, it's more that you are curating a thing, like a collection of stuff.
Right.
And you find all these synergies, and to me that makes it feel more like gallery curation, or like a, like maybe even a garden or something. And I know that's probably an overused, metaphor in some ways, in regards to games at all nowadays. But in terms of gardening, it's like you pick the things that you think will work together, and then you try and game the elements of AI or randomness that are built in by messing with those probabilities a bit. Like you'll build in more of a crit chance and more of a more of a stun chance, or more of a like all of those things. You'll essentially try and mitigate the natural randomness with your own knowledge or skill. And I like that. I like making it feel like I've made a shape work.
Yeah, right. I think that's kind of, and it's sort of watching that pattern resolve as well, watching all the sort of probabilities boil down to who's left with what at the end and things. It's very different in some ways to what I get out of like competitive team games or one-on-one games, where the whole point is that the pattern is kind of unresolvable, and so you've got to try and get through it with you've got to make it advantageous to you, but it's never going to be stable. And that's I find that very exciting, but also very draining.
Like what kind of?
Well, so in a game of Dota or something, the reason Dota is my favourite game, and the reason it won't stop coming up, is because it actively fights being over. Right, it's why I would always defend that you can't tap out of a Dota game, because the idea is it's not just how you. This is a bit of an art point, and then I feel it's going to be a podcast full of them. But like a lot of competitive games, you can learn a playbook, and sometimes you're learning that for a map or something. This was, I think, the problem with Heroes of the Storm at competitive level. It was very much you do this on this map at this point and you win, and if someone interrupts you, you probably lose. And so it becomes a memory challenge. And even if I'm playing something like competitive Destiny at the moment in ranked, you kind of get a sense of, oh, this is the opposing team's loadout, this is the approach to them that works. Maybe they change things up, but the game is fairly short, and so chances are if you crack it fast enough, you can get it to the end and then you've won. The thing I love about Dota is it's like, you might think, you can theorize all you want about why a game's going well or badly, but there are so many elements in play, from the draft to how things are laned to rotations and timings and item timings and farm and all of these different factors, that any given moment of the game, you can only be so certain about how you got to this point. And then the game has several phases like that, and they have their own relationships with each other. So you have to have this relationship you're forced into a position where you can't solve it. You just have to try and make the best decisions you possibly can. And I find that very compelling. But it's also very stressful. I
think the difference between your experience of that and my experience of that is that for me there is too much information and I can't prioritize it, whereas you somehow seem to reach into that mess of information and find the pressure points that will alter the game, or see that, whereas well but I mean, so I think what I'm worried about with Age of Elements, or whatever they've called it, I can't remember.
Rise of the Elements?
Yes, that's the one. Is, so in Dota they, at some point with the map, they messed with the jungle. Like I think at first it was just moving the steps or things like that. The jungle being the sort of the area between the 3 lanes. So they moved the steps, I think, and they added shrines that will like replenish you in some way. And they moved the camps and changed a bit how those would work. And that, everything about that was just, the feeling was that all of that stuff that I'd learned and that acted almost as a solid base on which I could add any of the incremental changes or even big changes like a new champion or like the massive seasonal patches or whatever. That was gone. It felt like there were no constants left, and so there was just nothing that I could do. Like, all of my timings were off, all of my natural instincts of where I walked and when were off, how to hide, how to do anything. Like, they all just disappeared immediately and haven't come back. I haven't been able to play it since. And now I feel a bit, I think that's the thing that's making me a bit on edge, is I'm sort of trying to fit in as much Teamfight Tactics as I can before it happens, just in case it goes away.
Because I guess like one of the traditional promises to a beta tester, particularly of a competitive game, is you're in at the ground floor of this. When the public, gets access to it, if it's a closed beta or something, or even if it's not, you'll be, in that vanguard, and maybe you won't stick around, but there's an appeal to having been there from the start and having all of that experience. And the way the fact that they're sort of launching it out of beta, but into a new seasonal pattern. And if we haven't spoken about this on the podcast before, it's essentially a season thing where they're going to rotate whole sets of characters in and out, which is super card game-like in some ways.
But it's like what Blizzard were doing with Hearthstone, isn't it?
Right, which is in itself based on Magic the Gathering. Yeah. So it's, that's what I mean. It's like, I can understand they're kind of like not giving you you just have one season of being the boss, and then then they rotate it so that other people get a chance.
Yeah. Basically, maybe it just boils down to, where's my medal? As so much in life.
Well, thanks, Pip.
I feel like I've made it a real downer.
No, not at all. If anything, I'm just glad that we had a pretty serious and informed discussion about a computer game before
returning to the Wimbling. Wimbledon rallies back and forth. No, actually, it's not as bad as all that. We definitely answered some questions, I think. I can't really remember, which is worrying, to be honest. And I just edited this thing. Yes, I guess we have to find some way of seamlessly transitioning back to the pod regular at this point. Let's just go back and see what those people are doing.
Egg.
Egg. Say it.
Egg. Say it. Say it. Egg. Say it. Egg. Say it. Egg.
Say it.
Egg. Hey! We join you now, like the egg in that Facebook video, bigger than before, but also drunker than before. It's time for some questions from questions for the episode 300. But the first question come from inside the house.
You're looking at Marsh as if...
Oh, I can do it. I've got a
No.
question.
Both of you said you had a question.
Sure about how to ask questions
I just
within
wanted
the
to
house.
Fuck's sake.
We're supposed to be professional interviewers.
My question is frivolous and stupid. So,
Tom, what was your
mine's
question?
deathly serious. So
All right, we have questions from Marsh and Tom this week. So, one of you make a decision
I'll go
among
first.
yourselves.
Okay,
good. A classic rally there, just like to point it out.
in Disco Elysium, the items of clothing you find have positive and negative buffs, modifiers to your personality traits, such as the t-shirt I mentioned that gives you, a polo shirt gives you -1 empathy and +1 rhetoric. And I want to know, do any of you guys have items of clothing or accessories that you own that you feel modify your personality traits negatively or positively?
Absolutely fucking yes.
Yes, everyone does.
I'm currently wearing my hoodie, my Dota hoodie, my slightly kind of natty around the edges Dota hoodie of +2 to fuck it, and -1 to self-esteem, this is the hoodie I wear when, oh shit, I've got a lot of things to do today and I no longer care about what I look like. It doesn't help.
I think, Chris will be familiar.
Alex, you got something to share with the class?
You're making an emergency call, Alex. Is there something you should tell us? It was not a great question, but it wasn't that bad.
I'm not. Call the police.
No.
Smashing
the glass on this. It's Alex. Alex, what bonuses are you positively or negatively?
I think the Disco Elysium misses out on something, which would be clothes that you think give you bonuses, but actually they give you something else entirely, which would be probably the net effect of the band t-shirts I used to wear, used to think gave me some kind of, I don't know, right to exist, and no.
No right to exist.
Yeah, I wear nothing with any writing on it and haven't done forever.
Sacred runes will besmirch.
Which I think ups my utterly anonymous shadow man in a corner stat. But
-1 to brands.
-1 to brands. And in this world of brands, that's a fucking fatal mistake.
A man who doesn't ally himself with any brands is a man not to be trusted.
It's a man who's alienated. He's a fragment drifting in space.
Or a TV adaptation of a William Gibson protagonist.
Yeah, I'm literally wearing a shirt that looks like the opening the opening sentence of this is not good radio, but I'm wearing
the sky was the colour of Tom's t-shirt.
There is, however,
tuned to Tom.
There is a symbol. There is a symbol on that t-shirt.
Look, it's very hard to buy a t-shirt.
It looks like
literally
plaster.
nothing on it.
What do you mean?
It's not, actually. The thing you just said is a lie, Tom.
What did I
They
say?
sell them in Debenhams all the time. T-shirts, blank t-shirts.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
The cut on those is shit.
It is. All right, fine. We've gone deeper on this then. It's fine to have a good t-shirt.
Does nobody else have a house hat? Is this...
What does it give you +1 to?
I feel like it's a pretty significant upgrade on all my stats. When you're in the house, obviously. When you're outside the house,
Sudden
who
debuff.
knows?
What kind of hat is this?
It's a little beanie hat.
I remember your house hat.
It's my house hat. You've seen me in my house hat.
I have,
Chris.
because we used to live together. So it's not that.
Why is it only for the house?
Because it's a hat you wear in the house.
That seems like restating the question.
Well,
Is it one you're embarrassed to wear outside?
No, it's just a house hat. It's a hat.
I heard the name.
I don't understand where this line of question is going. I feel it's already been answered.
We need exposition, Marsh. We need exposition.
If anything, I'm more likely to wear hats outside where it's cold than I am inside where it's warm.
No, it's a hat. I started wearing, because my hair can be quite floofy. So I started wearing it, and also I lived in a graveyard, which was fucking cold.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but, yeah.
So after I got up and had my shower in the morning, I'd wear a house hat to decrease both the floof and the threat of pneumonia. And it's persisted. And to be honest, I don't feel normal if I haven't worn my house hat in the morning.
So what does it give you? It's like +0, fine, -0, fine.
Well, I think it's a constitution buff. I think, had I not worn it, I'd try and pick up a necktie and die. So it's pretty significant.
How does it affect your inland empire?
Well, like I said, it's an improvement to all possible stats.
Even savoir-faire?
No, actually, no. My partner is very unimpressed by my house hat.
I see. I'm wearing joggers right now, which just the most comfortable thing you could possibly wear, which is why I do it. And but when you go outside with these, it's sort of like just dunks you a cool stat. It just any sort of potential. Also your sexiness. Any sort of.
It's fine in winter.
See,
It's dark early. People can't see.
Well, these are black as well, so I got perfectly stealthy.
This is a flaw in Disco Elysium's stat system because savoir-faire is both like your stealthy agility and your cool. And actually, I think this is a garment that raises one of those things and decreases the other.
I would agree with that completely. Yeah. But there's a terrible debuff if you wear them all the time at home. But the debuff is negated by the fact that my partner has agreed to marry me. And that's just
Locked
the way
in
it,
now.
Right, yeah, we
just
haven't
the way it is now.
accounted in both your case, Tom, and your case, Marsh,
She's married the house hat and everything.
exactly the I'm engaged
it's
now
happening, yeah.
sort of modifier on all clothing stats, which is resets everything to 0 as well.
Yeah. Everything's equal. Everything equals out. Yeah.
I do have a pair of pajamas that are very, very comfortable, and it's amazing at first. And then if you actually do have a lazy weekend where you wear them all day, there is a strangely negative quality to that. Where you're sort of like,
what am
I am
I?
comfortable, but there's something I feel like I'm wallowing now.
So I used to kind of maintain the concept of a pajama day, right? And like once every 2 weeks at least, I would have some kind of day where I didn't have to leave at least a dressing gown in terms of what I would do at the day. I don't know if it's a testament to where my life has changed or not, but that hasn't happened in years now. Like, that legitimately hasn't happened in years. And I think I'm existing in a kind of ecosystem. Like, I think I've broken the game. Like, I think I need to have a pajama day in order for any of my stats to make sense anymore. I'm in some sort of like boundless sort of number wang territory now where nothing is real anymore. Does that make sense to anyone?
Yes, it is real.
That's an unexpected
That was the
conclusion.
dream.
But
That was the dream. The bed day. Those are dreams.
Yeah, what is day off?
One of the
We're
greatest
not having bed day
innovations.
days until like very old age.
Yeah, no. Like, it's as if I've had children, but without having children.
Oh no.
I think one of the greatest innovations that the new world has brought to us in the form of America is the idea of comfy pants. In you know,
pants in the American
yeah,
sense.
what we
Yeah,
talking
pants in the American sense,
I
because
see.
in previous lives, I would never have thought of the idea of wearing pajamas all day. I would have thought that was disgusting. But the comfy pants really are very comfortable, and they come with a very attractive patterns. I have some which have some Dalmatians on them. I've got some which have dogs, and the dogs are bearing different kinds of food. Some of them have cake, some of them have roast dinners. They're
In their
wearing
mouths?
hats. They're bearing them in different ways. You know, they
March,
Multiple
please.
dog food transport methods.
and I'm fully sold on the comfy pants as a form of
comfy
dress.
pants,
You
it's
can't leave the
house
house,
hat.
obviously. Yeah.
What's on top?
What's on top?
What's on your torso?
On my torso, it's just one of my normal t-shirts.
Mark, please complete this mental image for me. Do you wear the house hat at the same time as everything you just described?
Yes.
Oh my god. That is some kind of
I
goal.
can send you a photograph. I could dress up for you right now if you like.
That'll take our podcast.
Marsh
to a
will be
whole
away from the
different space.
microphone for a while.
I just assembled a quite complicated IKEA wardrobe. Okay, fine, no response.
You said it was a lamp earlier on.
No, I've done both. I've furnished a house. We've furnished a house. Don't take this away from me.
Congratulations.
Like, anyway, but as part of that method, I had to figure out whether I needed 2 different places to store t-shirts or one. Trust me, this is going somewhere. But as part of that, I did have to establish t-shirts that I'm now kind of like comfortable that I own, and band t-shirts that are for Tuesdays. You know what I mean? Like, that sort of emit a very powerful sort of, again, fuck it energy.
Why Tuesdays?
I think I've refined my situation.
Tuesday is the
to-
most nothing-y day of the week. Nothing happens on a Tuesday. I was born on a Tuesday, interestingly.
I think I've just refined it all to a state of continual low effort. Like, I always get up. I cannot schlub around the house. Like, and only wear comfy trousers, whatever. It's got to, but it's always jeans, and it's always the t-shirt, and it's, but it will never change like that. Like, whatever I do. And
I'm just thinking,
because there's that thing of sort of, like, was it Steve Jobs talking about the fact that he always wore any particular clothes, he didn't have to put any thought into what he wore. Like,
Yeah, Barack Obama said that as well. Like,
and I think it.
10%.
I'm the
in many ways,
the
just
not like those two.
the worst possible kind of expression of that ethos.
So, in Destiny, in Destiny 2, there's a thing.
Right
What
now,
a surprise.
my
Let's
Destiny
go back to
character,
Destiny.
on the other hand,
Well,
had
so bear with me.
chrome fucking pauldrons.
I bet they do, but bear with me. So,
Don't wear those on a Tuesday.
when you choose to take on the Nightfall strike, i.e. the most difficult strike at a certain difficulty level, 950 or above, it prevents you from changing your gear mid-mission.
Okay.
Which means you have to pick a loadout at the beginning and obviously to account for this week's modifiers. It's a video game. You know how they work. Anyway, this means that when you begin the strike, it says equipment locked and all of your various gear slots lock. You're the only person who would know this, Alex. Does that happen when you become a dad? Good.
Always where it happens invisibly, like you just, you feel options kind of peeling away.
Yeah, you go to the chest slot and it's, jumper.
This is just what it is. But you don't really miss it because it's all just gone.
Well, that's a beautiful advocation for the joy of children there.
I kind of just wanted to end the podcast there.
Yeah. Because I feel like, Marsh and Tom S being recently, engaged both are at the first stage of this, which is all gear stats are now equal.
It's fine. It's part of the package now.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
I don't know that our fiancés would agree with this. But,
I've recently started wearing glasses, and I feel that the glasses I've chosen...
For what?
Seeing, presumably.
For reading, basically.
Right.
Close range stuff. So, obviously, +1 to perception, but I also feel they give me -1 to, like, empathy. I've chosen ones that look slightly...
Oh my god!
Well, so it's partly about, like, disc illusion kind of fudges, like, is it affecting how you feel, or is it affecting how other people feel about you? I feel in this case I look less sympathetic with the glasses. They have a kind of, because they're the half frame things where, like, the top half has a frame and the bottom half doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
What
You
that
don't
does,
look that judgmental.
it overemphasizes your brow in a very stern way.
You looked cross.
You look a little bit like, not sure about this.
But isn't empathy just your internal ability to realise another person's feelings and understand them?
Yeah, but so the polo shirt thing and discrimination, I think is a nod to, like, other people will assume you're less empathetic.
Right.
Rather than
I see what you
actually
mean.
get less empathy.
So, Tom, you and I are the only people in this room not wearing glasses. Do we feel like, do you feel alienated from everyone except
what
me?
club are you
Like,
in
this is
now?
why I'm trying
I'm not
to...
saying all glasses make you less empathetic. I'm saying mine, I think, make me look less hospitable, less like...
I would
less
say
I
that
have
you
no idea
do
what's
not-
going inside these people.
No idea what's going inside.
Who are these aliens?
Going on.
nothing right now.
But also,
Who are these lumps of meat I must converse with each week?
What is this liquid going inside them?
You don't look that judgmental.
As the glasses, take your glasses off, you'll immediately understand all of this.
Oh, this is a rowdy one. That's good.
This is question 1, incidentally.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
can I do my question?
Yeah, do your question,
You can
Marsh.
do that in the end. Do you want to do the other
No,
questions
do it
in between?
now.
Do it
You
now.
sure?
You've brought it up now. We're going to hold them in suspense.
It's a quiz question
A quiz.
about this very own podcast, what we've done.
Okay.
Oh.
Ooh.
So it may be really boring if Chris just knows the answer. But I thought it might be fun to get you guys to guess what the most discussed games were on this podcast.
Oh, that can't
And
be.
like, I have a list
statistics.
Based on tags on the website?
based on tags, so not accurate in any way, but broadly accurate. And there are a lot of draws in the top 10 as well. And I will give a prize out, which I haven't decided what it is yet, but I will give a prize out to the person who gets the most.
Okay.
Well,
Alex is
How
literally
we-
putting his
Alex,
hands up.
I was going to say,
I'm raising my hand.
Alex has a +2 buff to this because he wasn't here
Yeah.
for some of the earlier podcasts. So-
Also,
Well-
if you put your hand up like you're in a sort of children's class, like, does that give
Children's class for children.
does that give you right of way? Is that how this works?
I'm putting my hand.
Tom, Tom, I was going to warn you, you're inches away from screaming, "What are you doing?" at Alex.
yeah, actually,
Volume down.
the format of this question could only invite chaos. I now realise, but I'm going to go with it. Alex.
I think the most talked about game is Slay the Spire.
What?
Interesting.
Whoa.
Tell you're a
Interesting.
latecomer.
No way.
Interesting.
I'm gonna...
Really?
Well, so the two things I'm thinking of, Dota 2 or Spelunky. I should pick one of those.
Oh.
I'm gonna say Dota 2.
Oh, I'm going to say Spelunky.
Well,
Chris?
fuck you guys. for taking the 3 obvious ones.
Why the hell?
So
didn't
I have to take one that's not one of those 3, right?
Dota.
Because those.
You can go with another one, and when we go for the top 5, and you can
Okay.
and I'll very badly try and remember what you said,
All right,
and come
well-
up with a score for you.
All of those 3 are in
Unjustly.
the top 5, I would wager.
So what games were those?
Spelunky, Slay the Spire, and Dota 2.
It's going to go really
I
well.
will add to the list.
Yeah.
I assume Destiny 2 count as two different things.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think they're
I think
actually
Destiny's come up that much.
I don't think it has relative to some other things.
If you combine them, I think it would be in there, but...
I don't know.
Is it
So also,
Lego Star Wars?
also one of the
how did you know?
one of the real
The
meta
first 50 podcasts were just exclusively
Lego
dedicated
Star
to
Wars
Lego
at the
Star
time.
Wars.
Subnautica.
Nice one.
Oh, left field.
Well, I mean, so I don't know what a point I just tell you. Whether I should just do this now.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
I think any more suspense is just going to be boring. So Dota 2 was a good guess. That was number 1. All the others were wrong.
Oh shit.
Whoa!
yeah.
None of the others in the top 5?
Not in the top 5.
What the fuck?
Destiny 2 was in the top 5.
What? Huh.
Yeah. But, so Dota 2 with a ridiculous 38 podcasts, which would sound insane had I not lived through every fucking one of them.
All right,
I was
I'll
actually
take it.
wondering if there's a perceptual bias where the games that I don't play, I perceive as being talked about more.
Yada, yada,
Dota 2 and
yada,
Destiny 2, like, fucking
Right,
hell,
and
here
the
we
other
go.
thing is
Whereas
that, like-
Spelunky, I'm like, we don't talk about Spelunky nearly enough, I would say.
I'm just saying, given that I've been on and edited like 85% of the podcasts we've ever done, it's gonna happen. Feel free to volunteer at any time.
I did a lot of them when I was here.
You did.
I got
did.
out of it
You
by
did.
not being in the in the
Then you
continent.
moved to Sweden. I would say, so one of the interesting things about this is Marsh is a much more diligent tagger than I am. When I'm editing the podcast, when I edit the podcast, I tend to only tag games that are mentioned substantially rather than like in passing. So it's either like one of the main games someone has played that week or it comes up substantially in a question.
So what you're saying is this entire exercise is completely pointless.
Right, well,
which
that
is
was
fine.
I just can't believe you didn't go through 300 episodes and actually
listen to
fucking
them.
do it properly.
March, read
I did
the
think
top
about
10.
doing a quiz where we'd guess what the actual titles of the podcast were in relation to, but I realised I'd have to listen to the episodes again. I was just like,
Yeah, that's too much.
oh no, maybe I could ask Kane, but I chickened out.
Top 10.
So, number 2, none of you guessed this, Bloodborne. With 29 podcasts.
That's because
That
every
famous PC
that's
game.
because every episode of the Bloodborne playthrough is tagged Bloodborne. And those are the only
Oh
things
my
that are
God,
tagged Bloodborne.
Marsh, your
Yeah,
system is rubbish.
Oh shit. I think that counts.
Because you went on tags, not things that also have the episode tag.
Oh.
So you're probably going to find.
Actually, you can't. Yeah, I don't think I can filter for that in the in the back end.
Yeah, well,
So number 3 though, I think is a legit one, which we can't get away from. Overwatch.
Wow.
Really?
17 episodes talked about Overwatch.
And none of us are
apparently.
really big fans.
No, I don't think any
Then
of us
Destiny
like it.
2 at 16.
Okay.
Then XCOM 2 at 15.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No Man's Sky at number 6 with 14.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why it stopped coming out.
Because that's been such a long story, hasn't it? We
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in the early days as a preview thing. We talked about it when it came out. And
It
talked about
keeps
it
on
got
refreshing
better.
and people are
That
interested
makes
to go
sense.
back to it, yeah.
Then Spelunky, which I thought would be like
I thought
number
it'd be
2.
dominant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we had a joint one at number 8, Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and Mass Effect Andromeda, weirdly.
Oh,
Which I think is probably
surprising.
Again-
a facet of our tagging system.
I think that's true.
I have to
and
notice
reliance on me.
there are a lot of 00K games in our tagging system based on the fact that if you put a comma in it, it decides it's a new entry rather than 40K. It's 00K.
Oh, because you type 40
Presumably a lot of a 40
I see. Warhammer 40,000. I
Warhammer
see.
40. Then Heroes of the Storm at 11.
That's going to be mostly you, Marsh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hitman and Slay the Spire,
Oh,
all
yeah,
at
Hitman,
11
I
as
should've
well.
guessed.
They're all at number 9.
Hitman
And
should have
then-
guessed, because we actually commented on how often it made us talk about it, because they kept doing episodic stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, there's a new Tropical Island level for that.
Ooh.
I think that is deserved that game gets talked about.
Yeah,
over
it's
again,
earned
it's
it.
still fucking great.
Yeah.
While we're talking about podcast stats, I can give one fascinating stat that I don't think I've ever revealed before. I can mention the person cited most in Patreon exit surveys.
Oh, God. That sounds cruel.
Oh no.
i.e., person mentioned when someone decides to stop supporting the podcast and decides to then subsequently fill out a questionnaire why. It's me, everybody.
I was just thinking it would be harsh to say this if it wasn't.
Oh, what?
But it's the person who's mentioned the most in I would have stayed if they were still here, position is Marsh.
Oh,
There you go. Hope all those people came back.
And they're all really disappointed now.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm still here.
used to be.
And at number 10, it's a split honours between Dishonored 2,
I was going to say Dishonored. Fuck.
but Dishonored 2 rather than Dishonored.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
Well,
that makes
because of the
sense.
timing.
We
Well,
did a whole
Dishonored-
special podcast about it. And
Yeah, and also Dishonored 1 was like
it was old,
2012.
yeah,
We
I
were-
think that was pre.
And weirdly,
Just pre-podcast.
Far Cry 5.
That'd be me.
Sometime Tom not shut the fuck up.
So there you go. That's
that
the
was
end
a
of it.
good quiz.
That was
I
a
don't
good
know who
quiz.
won that.
Very good
I
quiz.
guess I'm going to have to give you all your prize somehow.
Thank you.
Yes.
The prize is being allowed to come into your house and record podcast.
Oh,
Aww.
we should get to see the house hat after the podcast.
oh yeah, that
I've
can
seen
be
the
the
house
shit
hat.
prize if you
It's
like.
just-
I was
is it-
thinking of actually a gift.
Is it
but
still-
I'm happy, you know. If
Is
you
it
wanna-
still like the brown beanie with the yellow trim?
It was never a brown beanie with you. I've never owned that. Yeah, it's always been a blue beanie, which has two different shades of blue, depending on which way out I wore it.
Really? Are you sure
Yeah.
you'd ever worn a brown beanie with the yellow trim?
Jesus Christ.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% certain I've never.
Maybe that
worn
was... No, that was me.
The house hat was on your head all along.
the
The house hat is coming from inside the house hat. So questions from the audience then. Via Serif writes, and this is a question I asked her to write, because I want to elicit this response, particularly from Tom Senior.
Hello.
Question. What noise did you, Chris, make when Kane on Discord described Destiny's shooting as, quote, fine? Recreations and rampant speculation on the types of noise made if Chris is not available, more than welcomed. Sound clips, the sound clip god, via Serif.
So is this a response to the comment there that he's just made?
The comment was,
deeply
well, the
incorrect?
shooting is fine.
Yeah.
And I think to go on, the punching is good.
I'm going to go with that.
Okay. Is that the noise you think I made or the noise you would make?
Oh, that's the noise you made.
It was more of a
I know what
kind
the
of,
noise I made was.
the noise I made was a sort of, like a sharp, shocked, disappointed futility. Like a kind of,
A futility.
My
That
noise,
sounds like an angry.
my noise would be,
are you sure it isn't what the fuck do you think you're doing?
look, I've screamed that into this microphone too many times this evening. So I'm going for the family fortunes.
Okay.
Was that the noise you
Wasn't
made?
me. That wasn't me.
It's not me.
Someone turns
That's
on.
me.
Danny writes, Dear CNC, Red Alert 2, Yuri's Revenge. Inspired by the Friends episode where Phoebe causes panic on a plane by declaring that the plane has run out of flange. My question for the pod... Sorry.
That's not a Friends episode.
Phalange. I slightly embellished the word phalange then, but I meant what I said and I said what I meant. If you could invent a new made-up part of a computer, what would you call it and what would its function be? Mine would be the gerbil squeezometer containment chamber, which would squeeze a gerbil, eliciting a squeak whenever you turn on the PC to produce the PC on beeping noise. Thanks to the great pods, your stories are always hilarious. So they better be.
I would like a chip that made it so when you make your computer go to sleep, it just goes to sleep. And then when you wake it with a press of a button or a wiggle of the mouse, it springs into life.
Does it spring or is it?
Oh, what?
Where the fuck are you?
Actually, no, I'd be happy with that.
My viruses! Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Got no operating system. Oh no. That would be good. That would be good. A little embellishment,
Yeah.
but just simply
What do
for
you
it
call
just
this?
to stay the fuck off and then stay the fuck on when I want it to be, as opposed to okay, I'm just not turning off the screen. I'm just not doing that, despite all the settings.
I think you need a name for this thing. This
G45 Z 48
Avenger.
That is what it would be called.
Vengeance.
Predator. 2000M murder.
Predator Hypersleep.
2000.
Pro. Yeah, that.
I want a
my-
name for like the just general kind of cluttered sluggishness that a computer gets after being on too long. And it's like, it's not the apps that are running. You've shut down, you've looked at Task Manager, you've seen what's running and you shut it down. And yet inexplicably, it's still just a bit slower than it should be.
Yeah,
and if you reboot, it'll be fine. And there's something that's accumulating in its back systems.
It's not like a
I
memory
think
leak, something like that.
Like some sort of,
I want to call it like chlurge.
yeah,
Splurge.
yeah.
You know, my sister's had a child fairly recently, not that recently.
Uncle Martin, here's to you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The child is approaching 2 years old. And it is,
I wasn't cheers this like 3 times.
That was a pointless ritual.
so it is approaching the age in which it discovers disobedience and relishes it. And I would like it if there was that, that moment where your computer does something unexpected and you don't know if it's just gonna fuck you. Like, you turn it on in the morning and it goes, burp, burp, burp. And you're like, that's an unusual noise. And then the light on your mouse turns off and the light on your monitor turns off and you're like, oh, is that it now?
Do we get this back?
And it's exactly the attitude that a toddler has when it's holding something precious to you and it's looking at you and thinking, I could drop this. I could drop this and really fuck up your life. Will I? And maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I like a noise which just encapsulated that.
The indecision. It'd be good if there was just a little sound chip. Instead of vital beeps or whatever, it just went, I'm fucked.
Sorry.
Or just like a kind
Sorry.
just a kind of like,
Ooh, shit.
not gonna say what, but
Just a deep groan, maybe.
Essentially, we want more relatable computing, is what I'm saying. Good. Next question comes from Kane. I think it's only fitting that pod archivist Kane gets a long fucking question on this, our 300th episode.
Possibly our longest episode. We'll find out.
We'll find out. Boo, writes Kane. Playing Control, I was struck by how much restraint it has. This is a horror-ish game that has, spoiler warning, not really a spoiler, no jump scares. It has plenty of opportunities for them, some excellent ones in fact, but somehow manages to repress the urge to make a big scary face appear from the dark and yell at you. This restraint also extends to its setting. It suggests that there are big, interesting things going on outside the Bureau's headquarters, in the thresholds and the AWEs across the globe, but it determinedly stays within the walls of the oldest house. I've often criticised works that don't leave themselves room for escalation. Netflix's Jessica Jones starts its first season with a scenario so traumatic and dark that a lot of people can't watch it. Then in each subsequent season it needs to escalate and its characters need to become increasingly wounded and unlikable. When you start off so extreme some people can't even watch your show, how many times can you escalate before you lose your audience entirely? To me, Control's restraint recognises this dynamic. It understands that if it showed everything in its first outing, it would struggle to escalate in the undoubtedly planned sequels. So we see a glimpse of the Black Rock Quarry threshold. We hear stories about the Redacted, where Redacted probably went, but never see it. That's left open for a sequel. The problem is, if you don't show enough cool shit in your first outing, people won't be impressed enough to play a sequel. I've definitely seen complaints about Control's insistence on staying in the oldest house. People wanted to visit Ordinary, to go to Redacted 36, to see where the mold came from, and so on. Some are disappointed that Control same Sing
it, brother.
And Kane went scat.
Close enough for jazz. Some are disappointed that Control kept so much so close to its chest. What do you think? Was Control too subdued, or did it cleverly show just enough to get people interested while leaving room for future escalation? And what's up with that jukebox tease, eh? Regards, Kane. I think, personally, as someone who's played Control all the way through, Kane might being a little bit generous here. I think Control does a lot with a limited set of assets and one enemy type, pretty much.
Yeah.
For sure.
I do like all the things that Kane says. I really like the setting of Control, but I just don't think it follows through really in the either the mechanics or the kind of actual actuation of its setting. Like, there's a line of dialogue where it says, he was a man like an explosion, desperate for control, or something like that, or desperate for authority. You're like, are explosions generally known for their desperation for authority?
I think this is a Tony Ellis absolute.
Yeah, I very generously read this in the sort of Max Payne school of game writing, where it's
but you
like,
really have to give it that generosity.
It's such a benefit of the doubt. It's like the words you've said don't matter. Like the sort, it's not, and it's like, it's not poetry, but it's like the words you've used evoke a kind of sort of feeling, and that's what I'll take from them.
Because that's all you can.
Yeah,
really.
But I think
is that bad writing? The answer is yes.
But it's drawing from such a rich theme of horror, and it's almost disappointing to me that it doesn't capitalize fully on it during the.
The thing is, it's not a horror game. Like that's it's a psychic
it's a
super soldier
game.
empowerment game where you're flying around and throwing fucking CRT screens at people.
So not to gross people out, but like, so for example, a lot of the ideas from this come from the SCP community, which is the forum that, which is capitalizing on like.
So what SCP is?
So it's a forum where people, like anyone can contribute, I believe, and the fundamental theme is ordinary objects becoming horrifying, basically.
Special containment protocols.
Exactly. And that's why they have to be contained in these facilities, because and
it's a good framing device because it's like, so it's basically a wiki of weird, creepy shit, but the framing device is, here are the notes we had to take to explain how to contain this thing.
Yes.
And so each individual weird anomaly, horror thing requires its own containment protocol. And so the wiki is just trying to explain how you contain it. And in the process of doing that, secondhand, you get implied stuff of like, absolutely. Oh my God, I can do this. And oh Jesus, why can you never let a human touch it? And that kind of thing.
Don't just want to describe, to demonstrate, like, the horror is extremely good. Like, as in, it's...
it can be. Some of it is like,
some of it's terrible.
Oh, it's scissors.
I'm trying to think of one that isn't too gross. But it's important to find one because it explains where Control comes from, because Control's fiction comes from that community. And it also comes from like stuff like Doctor Who, where like, a chair ate someone. Like, did that stuff.
Well, this is the thing, and this is the thing that's interesting about its use of assets is its tradition is really firmly rooted in things like Doctor Who and the Twilight Zone, which are all about the art of making scary sci-fi with no fucking budget. Right. Where it's did that chair kill somebody? I guess we're going to hire pretty good actors to stand around and go, shit, maybe. Can we afford to rotoscope a Cyberman? No.
Peter Cushing doesn't have anything to do on Thursday afternoon. Let's get him in.
Yeah, perhaps it was the chair. Like, shit. Now children are scared of chairs. Like Doctor Who's great trick has always been making children afraid of ordinary things.
Yeah, but that is a fantastic genre of horror. And Doctor Who, so the Autons, for example, was just like, what if mannequins in the windows that you see in clothes stores every day came to life and started destroying your brain? That is the type of horror. And it's not just in Doctor Who, it's everywhere. There's loads of examples of this. But like, in Control, their power-ups, and that.
Well, it's because you're the person with the power to claim them and calm them.
I understand the conceit. I understand the kind of context around it, but that robs them of all their threat, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's one example where it actually manages to follow through on that a little bit by having another character involved. But I agree. I think one of the misnomers about Control is it's just not a horror game. It's like a Lost style TV mystery about a flying woman and her ability to throw bins at people. Like,
yeah. I'd recommend,
which I would fucking watch, by the way.
I don't mind the fact that it's not a horror game. That's not really my objection. It's just I don't think it sells the things it is about very well.
It gets closer to it, deeper in. It's okay.
I'm really into the broader kind of setting of it. I really like that. I love the idea of the oldest house. I love the idea of these kind of objects of power, which are just these, essentially the most generic forms of these items. And somehow, because of their genericness, because of their communal kind of understanding,
archetypes that
gain power.
Yeah,
I love that idea.
Yeah,
but it's just, there's not the writing moment to moment to support that, and the game is just a shitty shooter.
It gets a lot better as a shooter, I will say that.
Oh, really?
When you have all the powers.
Oh god, yeah. I'm just desperate for it to give me something at the moment. I'm just
you have...
great, I've got a telekinesis throw thing, which is basically the same as just like any other weapon, because there's no real kind of consideration about the things that you're throwing. You're just pressing a button and then something gets thrown at a guy and it does a certain amount of damage versus, popping out of cover and doing with your gun. So it's just the same.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like, you can tell a lot by the fact that if you're playing with a pad, its powers have specific mappings. Like, shoulder buttons don't have a purpose until the power comes along, and that's for a reason. It's a whole power set.
Yeah, I feel I should be playing with the pad. I think playing with a keyboard and mouse is a bad idea because you can't actually use your telekinesis powers while strafing right. Shit. Which is rubbish, obviously.
Yeah, it's like, I played with the pad, and with all the powers unlocked, it's a pretty good, fun shooter.
Okay.
But it's like, until, like, it leaves it quite late into the game, and I think this is, again, as an asset thing, for you to be like, oh shit, when I can fly, and I can create a shield, and I can control things, and I can mind control enemies, all of this stuff works strategically with the enemy types. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's all at the point at which I'm pretty sure I've quit. It's also saying, hey, you can get this thing which will make the game like maybe an iota more interesting if you grind. I'm just like, oh, come on. No. Don't do that. If your game is really quite bare bones and budget, don't ask me to grind for anything that was going to make it tactically more exciting.
It has some pretty good set pieces towards the end. They're not like totally mind-blowing, but it has some really good kind of bits where it kind of plays with its...
I love the look of it. It's an amazing looking game. Yeah. Also, just whatever they've done with the lighting model in the game. I don't think I've enabled ray tracing or anything super fucking fancy in it.
Still amazing.
But it is just incredible looking.
Have you seen Duncan Harris's shots?
I know. I actually haven't. So Dead End Thrills.
He's been dinking around in there, dunkening around in there.
Dunkening around.
He's got himself
magic
Dead
dunkening.
End Thrills, by the way.
We should go and hang out with Duncan at some point.
Yeah, we should.
It's probably not podcast ready material, but I'm going to say it. He got bitten by a weird thing in a well.
What?
He dug up his new garden.
Yeah.
And there was a well underneath it. And in the well was something that bit him. And then
category of thing?
It was a bad thing.
Is it a person?
And he fell over and bonked his head as a result of the bite. And so
Go to the hospital.
If you find a well that's been buried, leave it buried.
Yeah.
Don't dig it up.
Don't
That's
dig
the
up
answer.
wells.
That's where the Ur-tween...
Well,
the Ur-teen dwells.
the Ur-teen bit him.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Turn to a radioactive tweet.
Anyway, he's been doing shots of Control, and they look really good. And Duncan, being Duncan, he removed almost all of them because he's now decided he's found some technique which has sort of made them all better. So like everything is now rubbish, and now he's going to have to redo it all. But like they're really good.
Very last thing I'll say on this: like if you enjoy stuff like the Control, hunt down the Lost Room, which is an indie series based on the same tenets as like SCP and Control, where there's a room that has become cursed somehow, but every object within it has slowly made its way out of that room, and they all have reality warping consequences.
Is this with the guy from 6 Feet Under? Was that a different series?
Which guy?
The main character in 6 Feet Under.
I'm not sure.
I can't remember. Peter Krause.
It's got Taub from House in it, and it's got some other people in it. Like,
no, I think we're thinking of different things.
Yeah,
I think the thing I'm thinking of might just be called The Room, and I know it's not the movie The Room, but there's a TV series about like a weird cursed hotel room with a special key to it, and they all have these like deep significance in some way.
That sounds really similar.
So, is it your thing a game or a film?
It's a TV series.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So, for example, there'll be an item that is just a playing card, and if you tap it against your head, you get transported to outside of a random part of Arizona. And there'll be a pen that will just eviscerate people, and they'll like it's the kind of it's about putting horror into everyday item.
I really like that stuff.
Which is a great idea. Right?
In Control, the idea that there's like a platonic ideal of a
motel.
A motel, which you can go to, which is always called the Ocean View. That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
That's the Lost Room, though. That is the Lost Room. Like, it's a motel room in that series, and they've just watched that and just.
Control does let itself go weird right at the end, which is fun. There's some real weird stuff at the end of that game.
Yeah. Also, talking guns and weird kind of.
Yeah, Gunner's phone.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, we are thinking of the same thing. The thing I'm thinking of is called the Lost Room.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. They sounded too similar to not be.
There's a book called The Way In, which is about a hotel chain for kind of people going to kind of business conferences. And the person, the main character, his job is basically to establish a conference which is about establishing conferences. So like it's a conference about how to build conferences. And they all stay in this hotel, and the hotel gets weirder and weirder, and he becomes obsessed with the pictures on the walls, because he becomes determined, like they're all this sort of shapeless kind of abstract, and he wonders what happens if you put all of the pictures together next to each other and rearrange them, and perhaps there's some meaning to it, and then everything goes very weird in this chain of hotels.
What was that called again?
The Way In.
So you were recently interviewed on BBC Radio. And you,
Mad Keen Gamer, Alex Wilson.
Indeed. But you also posted a screenshot of, well, not screenshot. a photograph, as they call them.
Shot in real life somehow.
A photograph of what that recording apparatus looked like. And lots of the people in Discord identified the person in the photograph getting out of the car as Chris Thurston, which poses a bit of a kind of overlook hotel.
It was. I know.
Maybe he's been here all the time.
I worked in a local BBC radio station when I was younger.
Not died there.
And
12 years ago.
And
did you kill anybody with an axe? I'm just
like, all I'm saying is, all of those environments, I have worked in BBC Radio Salisbury and I worked in BBC Radio Swindon, and both of
axe murders.
No, like everything is about the amount haunted you can expect the BBC to be, which is a bit haunted, but we're not going to talk about it.
Very a bit haunted.
So
it was like
have I told you
1990s. It was amazing.
I must have told this story on the podcast before. The first time I walked into BBC Radio Swindon, they told me, and I was young at the time. I was 20, I think, or 21. And they told me, and I think they identified a young person. So they walked me into a room with all the tapes in it, and they pointed at a picture on the wall that was in the tape library, which was of just, like two middle-aged people. There were separate pictures, but a middle-aged man and a middle-aged woman. And they said, "This is your audience." Never do anything these people wouldn't understand. This is true. This, and the idea was this, it was like there was just a white, middle-class, middle-aged British couple. And it was like, if you feel like...
They kept in the tape room.
Yeah, they kept, and it was clearly the only purpose of these photos was to be shown like a kind of optician's test to young people coming in. Like, do you recognize a demographic here, or do you just see your parents? And yeah, so that was the first instruction. And after that, you were kind of free to do what you wanted as long as you didn't go too crazy with it, basically.
Don't axe murder anybody and don't
I made a bit about druids.
I think things have changed, because if I'm going to get introduced as a mad keen gamer, I'm pretty sure that means the BBC has very much changed.
No, I don't think so. I think that's exactly the same thing. I think that is exactly the same thing, Alex.
Yeah, I'd love us to link the interview that Alex did already, which I thought.
Don't! My God!
You were very good. You were very good.
Absolutely, it's a really good, interesting interview. It's just, I mean, it wasn't actually as bad as Radio 4 has been in the past in introducing games. I thought she was pretty switched on, but there's just that kind of air of condescension about it, where it's like, oh, and here's Melvin Bragg. I hear you're a big bookworm, Melvin.
You big nerd.
They probably wouldn't say that.
I did a radio bit, I think it was for the Golden Joysticks or something, years and years ago. And then when it finally went up, and it was relatively serious. I can't remember what the sort of issue of the day was, but it was something Grand Theft Auto related or something. And it was like, do games cause violence? It's like, well, ultimately all forms of media are kind of moderated in a certain way, and games are different. And the only thing that was different when it went live was that behind every time I talked, there were like pew 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 pew, pew sounds in the background to illustrate that the games man was talking.
Fuck's sake.
Wow! It's very good. It's very good. It really livened it up because I sounded boring. We have one final question for this episode 300, the longest episode. Dawn of the final day. 24 hours remain. Gavin writes, "Hey all. Firstly, I'm listening to episode 217. Remember that? 83 episodes ago.
Clearly. So clearly.
So he's going to listen to the answer to his question.
83 episodes later.
So he is-
where Tom S. is loving his recently acquired Steam Link.
And
Which made me wonder, when a game can be played in front of a computer or in front of TV, which do you prefer? When a game can be played with a keyboard or with a controller, which do you prefer? Sorry, I don't know why I've done this to you. Has your preference for either of these things changed over time? So that's the first question. Second question, which is going to get a big old oh shit from everybody, is you've all got a love of prose. What are your favourite novels? Must be fiction and must be dear to your heart.
oh shit!
Exactly. So let's answer the first one about things and what nearer television might be. Lastly, thanks very much for the Crate and Crowbar. Every week I learn and every week I laugh, and you never fail to brighten my day. Take care, Gavin.
Thank you, Gavin.
Oh, that's super nice.
It is super nice.
Oh.
So, ooh.
One at a time. Let's start with number one.
Yeah, the
Do
question
you like
number one.
big TV far away or small TV close by?
I am kind of Dougal from Father Ted, so...
What the fuck are you doing?
I do sometimes just shout that at games as well. And maybe that's...
Rage Dougal.
That might have been the learned behaviour that translated into this train incident. What was the question, Chris? Sorry.
Big screen.
I was having a swig of beer.
Big screen far away, small screen close. Your thoughts?
So I've figured out that I can play Slay the Spire on any screen whatsoever, because I bought it again on the Switch.
The smallest screen.
The smallest screen.
But also the closest screen.
But
If you lick
increasingly
it.
I've been playing console games where, like, they aren't on PC. For example, Red Dead Redemption. And
Soon on PC. 1 month on PC.
yeah, 1 month on PC. I hope they, yeah.
Will we
So-
play? Answer no.
Will the horses be faster?
Well,
Is horse car? Is
Putting more questions on top of this.
Yeah,
Already
Tom.
difficult to answer question.
When they upgrade,
There's a whole
when
stack of
they upgrade
questions
Red
here.
Dead Redemption to be on the PC, will horse be car?
horse not be car. No, horse not be car. Horse ball texture be better? Question
Horse
mark.
bum. Nice.
Horse bum nice indeed, Alex. Question mark.
I'm going to get into this question.
Yeah, so
This is part one.
oh shit. So I think there are actually like a bunch of people in this stream.
Oh, lots of people in this industry. It's true.
Let's get through this. We've got to get through this. Who can answer the question of which games work better on small or large screens? Which is fundamentally the question.
The answer, Tom, is Diablo.
Look, yeah, that Chris is correct.
The answer is Diablo is both somehow.
I got input on this because
Okay,
Thank
cool.
God.
Thank fuck for this.
Thank you for saving.
part of the question was about
reaches
whether you
his
prefer playing things on mouse and keyboard or on gamepad and
Yeah,
sofa and
thank
whatever. And I've talked before about I switched to gamepad wherever possible because of my RSI issues with mouse and keyboard, and I spend all day on mouse and keyboard when I'm making games. I recently played Borderlands 3 entirely on gamepad, and I think it's the first-person shooter I've really enjoyed on gamepad, where it's like actually I'm having fun partly because I'm doing well, and yet I'm playing on gamepad. Because I played Doom, the reboot of Doom, on gamepad initially, on PC, but I was like, I like gamepad now, and, RSI, fuck keyboard, I'm going to play on gamepad.
Yeah.
And I just thought, why are people excited about this game? I don't like, it's fine, but it's nothing special about it. And then I just tried on mouse and keyboard experimentally, and I was like, oh my god, okay, this is amazing. And so I kind of had it in my head of like, if it's actually skill-based, and if it's actually like enjoyable as a shooter, then it kind of has to be mouse and keyboard. But Borderlands 3, the first time, partly because it's quite RPG based, so a lot of the fun you're getting from it, although it is skill based as well, it's just really satisfying to feel your skill choices pay off. Like I'm going for a build where I have an increased chance of, like 18% of my damage is turned into elemental damage. I have a higher chance of those elemental damages like turning into a status effect.
Yeah.
And then when the status effect happens, there's a chance it might spread to someone else. If they die while the status effect is happening, they explode with that status, which applies it to everyone else. And then every time a status effect is applied, it might apply another different status effect to them as well. And just all that stuff stacking up, it feels really good. And then I also think on console, at least, Borderlands 3 has better auto-aim than most games. There's something about it that feels really right to me and just like, it's helping me, but it's never doing the wrong thing. It's never like pushing my cursor away from what I want to be doing.
Have you played Destiny 2?
I have.
Where the shooting is...
I daren't offer an opinion on the shooting, because who knows what noises might come out of you. It didn't click with me. I didn't hate it or anything. I just kind of played it I was playing alone and just playing like some single player stuff. And it just didn't really...
The weird thing about Destiny 2 is like auto aim is a hidden stat. But,
you can buff with explicit buffs.
Yeah, which is really fucking strange, but it is.
It's called target acquisition.
Target acquisition, yeah, or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And
how do they handle that on PC?
they don't know. They don't handle it. No, not really.
Actually, I do know the answer to this. On PC, it's hitbox size.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
It modifies enemy hitboxes relative to the weapon you're holding. And if you think that's sort of relativistic bollocks, welcome to Destiny.
Yeah, right. Oh shit, I didn't know that. That's my mind has just been blown.
Because I graduated to PC when it hit Steam, and I'm still using Pad because I just like it. Pad.
It's a great.
Because I just like it. Pad.
It's a great pad game.
I remember, like when I started playing with PC this week, I didn't think it would stick, and now, it's stuck.
Oh, it feels good, but I think I feel sick, because my screen is 27-inch and it's just too close.
Screen's too big.
Screen too big, too close. Alex, the classic error.
Alex, no.
Move further away.
But I can't because I've got my keyboard and mouse, you see, and I'm chained to that thing. I can go back with a pad. Wow.
A crying shame. Easier question, favourite book ever?
Oh, Christ.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm going to go with Mrs. Dalloway before Tom does.
Ooh.
Oh shit! What?
He's taking it seriously. Shit.
Yeah. Oh, it's good though.
That's right.
That's a really good
the name
answer.
Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
It's a very good book. People should read it. It's nice. Everybody loves it.
Explain.
Well, no, I won't. All right. It's sort of like the project that Ulysses by James Joyce embarked upon, where it is this giant epic which is compressed into a single day. But Virginia Woolf achieves that with such an economy, whereas James Joyce does not. James Joyce's Ulysses is a huge book, and it is a very worthy book, and you will suffer in order to read it. Whereas Virginia Woolf manages to achieve pretty much the entire thesis that James Joyce is striving for, but within like a centimetre of pages, or less, in fact. And that is remarkable. It contains the entire scope of humanity within it.
Wow.
It is a very humane and beautiful piece of writing. I think it's also very accessible, in contrast to a lot of modernist literature, which is so high-minded that lesser minds, such as my own, just cannot really parse it. Whereas I think Virginia Woolf was writing not only for a high-minded audience, but also with the attempt to bring up a mass audience to that level. And I think she achieves it much more successfully than James Joyce ever would. So there. Fuck you, James Joyce.
The note we would end 300 episodes on.
That's what we were waiting for.
Yeah.
I love you, Marsh Davis. That is such a good summary.
This is sort of relevant. I was at a dark age of Camelot, guild meeting in Preston.
Okay.
Right.
In Preston when I was 16, and I decided that this was the night I was going to learn to drink scotch. And a friendly Scotsman called Colin taught me to drink scotch, and that night I attempted to read Ulysses, fell asleep within 2 pages, and woke up with the worst hangover I've ever had in my entire life. And that is how I loop that back to PC games somehow.
Mr. Dalloway is like 220 fucking pages or something
It's a bargain.
Bargain.
I'm sorry, I love
That's
that
exactly the way you should think.
Yeah, that's how you...
Wait, what is the price point for this product? Sounds like very slim to me.
It's great
you
to have.
should get a hit of the DLC. I mean,
It's great to have one of these. It's great to have one of these modernist novels that is done within 25 hours. You know what I mean? Rather than like Ulysses.
But it'll go free to play as soon as it's like 50 years after a death. It'll go free to play.
You're on Project Gutenberg.
The zinger of the book world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just
You
got
fucking wears that shit. You get fucking Mrs. Dalloway, and it's there with the fucking headers.
you say
Like-
Gawain and the Green Knight is Wes.
Yeah, exactly. You're like fucking Boink Clan ripped this. Guess what? Most polite knight, motherfucker. It's Gawain. He's so fucking polite. He dies in every story because he's so kind. Unlike Tom Senior, the opposite of Gawain,
the shouting
the Lancelot of trains. Where Gawain would apologise and die
I would be unjust and very angry.
and decapitate someone.
Probably the guy I met.
Exactly.
Oh dear.
This was a bit.
That went...
I did go,
It did go. Yeah, read Mrs. Dalloway's fucking...
And everybody goes, eh.
What was the question?
I can't remember.
What
Favourite
good
novel?
book.
It was such a good answer, Marsh.
Yeah,
I thought I could follow it up.
Yeah.
I was trying to think
I
of
say
this because
Mr. Strong or something like there's something I really.
the opposite of Mrs. Dalloway. A Mr. Man book to go in. I don't know what I would say. Maybe the actual book of the, like, oh fuck, if we're talking literary, it's a fucking rabbit hole, but maybe The Princess Bride? Question mark. The actual novel, that is great. And the film is great. Everything about it is great. The remaking it, why?
If you're on a Disco Elysium kick and you want to read some kind of noir stuff that fills that slot, then I read Red Harvest recently by Dashiell Hammett on the recommendation of the Waypoint podcast, actually. Which is part of a series about the Continental Op, who's a private detective who I think is never named in any of his stories. But he just kind of shows up in a town that is full of corruption, and it's got a similar kind of thing where the union, there's kind of a backstory of the union. There isn't like an evil union who's kind of dominating a town, but the ways that thing came to power and fell out of power has informed the dynamics going on. And it's that similar kind of thing of like a really, complex situation with a chaotic agent walking into it and just deciding to kind of put a spanner in the works and just see what happens. And, it's fun to see how you just go into a situation, just, I don't know to what extent it's pre-planned, but just come out with a lie when he says it, you think, what the hell are you saying? That doesn't make any sense. And also, why did you even think of saying that? And then you see the consequences of it play out and how different people react to it and how it, like, a certain person can't disprove it and another person believes it. And then it forms this kind of like seed of destruction that then spreads throughout the whole town, dismantles the whole thing. It's pretty cool.
Alex?
I have no idea what my favourite book is, but I'm reading right now a book called Pekincho, which is about sort of a multi-generational story about Korean settlers, or like Korean people living in Japan, and it's really fucking good. It's really, really interesting. It starts in the 1920s.
It's also about the birth of pachinko itself.
Don't
like
know. Is it?
I don't know. Well, I thought you told me this. It's about the creation of that game where like a ball goes into an arcade.
I don't know. I didn't say that.
Didn't you?
I've never said that.
You did.
Because I don't know what it's
We were
about.
in a car together. You literally said this to me.
Didn't you just say that the book's called Pachinko?
That's all, but it might just be a coincidence.
Say what it's about, though.
Oh, okay.
You killed Tom Senior.
And he went that.
I have to say,
Sounds good.
the reading, the fucking, The phrase, I've been reading this book called Pachinko. Something about the origins of Pachinko. I don't know! It's one of the finest.
You read it? Oh, good. At the moment, they're just trying to sell,
balls and pegs separately.
Those spicy pickles you get in Japanese food. They're just selling them. I don't know anything about balls.
Alex, why are you killing me? Please stop killing me. Why can't you say what the thing is without killing me? It's just pachinko, right? It's just...
What did I say? Did I say it wrong? Did I always...
There was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
In conclusion,
This
was a lot.
300.
Oh, sorry.
This was...
You're 300.
does anyone have any more books to share? If not, I'm going to outro.
I've done one, but I'll do June.
Tom?
June's good.
June's
Also,
a great choice for this.
Hey, how about The Left Hand of Darkness as well?
Oh, yeah.
I remember a meeting with you, myself, and a good friend of ours, and she asked us what our favourite books are. Not our favourite books, but the books that we recommend most to people. And you jumped in with Mrs. Dalloway. I was like, oh, fuck, that was mine. And then I suggested The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, because that is one of the most profound books I think I'd read as a teenager, and it changed the way I thought about gender and identity in a really fundamental way. And it's also a fucking great, riveting read. It's just an absolutely rollicking, great sci-fi novel as well.
The equivalent I would. At secondary school, we had an very lucky to have just an incredible teacher who put us all onto Toni Morrison's Beloved.
Oh yeah.
Which is that changed my life. It changed the way I saw the world, genuinely. And it is a fucking sensational book, and R.I.P. Toni Morrison.
If you'd like to send us a question for episode 301 plus of the Crate and Crowbar, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. Please bear in mind there'll be no Tom, Francis. He's gone now until he's back. Which is how that works.
You're saying you won't be able to stick? You won't be able to stick,
I mean, he's going to come back 4 times a year. He said that, didn't he? He's right there. I've chosen...
Alex, you made that super dark.
It's not going to work, guys.
However, if you are Canadian, you might see him. And we all know that some of you are.
Weirdly ominous.
If you...
Very menacing.
If you would like to find us on Twitter, you can do so. It's at Crate and Crowbar, isn't it? The answer is yes. YouTube, we've got it. YouTube.com/
Brand new slogan.
Crate and Crowbar. And our slogan for our channel, it's certainly there. Some followers. If you'd like, well, you don't have to like. Some of you do. Support us on Patreon. I'm trying to slow intro. How's it?
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's like slow outro. How's it going?
slow tro.
Some of you
just get slower and slower and slower until this podcast never ends. We keep Tom forever.
Technically, I can't leave till the podcast ends.
Some of you choose to support us on Patreon, and that's wonderful.
Thanks. I thought you were going to tell them off.
No. How could I tell them off, given that they pump vital money into it?
They bought the 5th microphone we didn't know existed.
Yeah, exactly. Many years
$3
ago,
went into that cupboard.
you enabled.
I just kept it secret. I don't know what you guys were doing.
No, you didn't keep it secret. You just left it in a perfectly accessible cupboard.
Yeah.
The limit was ultimately my imagination. In any case, Patreon. Wow. If you'd like to find out more, patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar is where you can do that. Supporting us allows us to do the podcast because it means we can pay people for their time. Incredible. Finally.
Can we say hooray for Tom?
Yeah.
Finally.
Hooray
for Tom.
Hooray! Oh, yes. Congratulations for being Tom.
Thank you, everyone. I don't know how to react to that or
He's
think
the
about
best
it
one.
or feel.
If we could sing the Canadian anthem, we would. But
Oh, Canada.
Oh, God.
Oh no.
Straight
My
out of
English wasn't a
twerking.
done deal yet, so please don't screw it up for me.
Fuck, that was so close. You guys just didn't quite know enough words. And you spared us from what was about to happen.
I hope Vancouver welcomes him adequately. As do we all.
Thanks.
beautiful.
He's not dying. Like, he's just going to Canada.
The Grey Havens.
In
Grey Havens.
In our household, that is what it means.
That's what it means. He's gone
gone
west.
to Canada.
Where's the rabbit,
Will
Daddy?
remain Galadriel.
We've all been trying to remain Galadriel this entire time. Finally, Tom has done it. If you would like to enjoy Tom's social media presence as he continues to remain Galadriel on our brave new continent, you can find season 2 of Tom at...
Okay, so I spell my username here often, but whenever I have to do it over the phone to someone who like needs to know my Twitter handle or whatever, it turns out they're getting it completely wrong. So I have tried to learn the NATO alphabet for my username, so I'm going to attempt that. Papa, Echo, November,
You got it wrong
Tango,
straight away.
Alpha, Delta, Alpha, Charlie, Tango.
Actually, I think that is right. I was wrong.
What did you think it was?
I thought it was Panther. For some reason, I
God
thought
of
it was
mischief.
Panterdact.
Oh, yes.
That's what you've been typing all this time. That's why I haven't got your DMs.
His nemesis!
Okay, well, in that case, I am shamed, and I must offer my own handle,
And you got to do
Ultimate
it
price.
which
in
is
some lesser form of...
Charlie, Tube, Heuristic, Urinal, Rebus, Silly, Tango, Enigma, Node.
That's it.
It's a good.
That's it.
It's a good bit. Keep it going.
Yeah, good.
Tom Senior.
You feature.
Oh fuck! I'm at PCG fucking Ludo.
It's quite a long handle.
BCG fucking Ludo.
Let the record show a cop-out, Marsh.
Mango ass, rectum, synecdoche.
Oh, he's so good.
I was going to say ampersand, but that doesn't begin with H.
Ampersand.
Ampersand.
Third season of The Wire.
Dick, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Anus, vulva. Indigo, Jesus, excrement, sexy.
Boy, I really lucked out by going first here.
Alex.
Oh, that was rough.
Fuck that.
Do it.
Yeah, fuck that.
Do it.
It's rotational.
We clap because we hate.
Can I suggest we do a communal one for rotational?
Okay.
Pass around the circle, starting with
okay.
Tom.
What do you mean?
Just start with a letter.
R.
No, I mean... I mean a word beginning with the letter R.
God damn it.
The thing is, I knew what you all meant. And I knew that this would happen. Anyway, sorry. Rod Fiend.
Ovoid.
Titty.
Algebra.
Tootle.
Wait, what?
Ionize.
Oblong.
Where the fuck are we?
Kneecap. So bad.
Begins with a K.
Tom. Gary, Tom, Joe.
Ageless.
Leprosy.
There we go. We got through it.
Oh, well, if we had to finish the podcast anywhere, I guess we finished it here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Listening.
Well, that was a mess, wasn't it?
Yes.
How do you feel? Ashamed? Happy?
Well,
regretful? Tired?
I mean, you put a lot of words in my mouth there, and all of them true. Ultimately, pretty proud that we got a podcast with 300 episodes, given what a state it is. There really is no reason that this has happened.
What do you think, if somebody listened to the very first one and then immediately skipped through to episode 300, do you think they would think there was personal growth? Do you think that they would think there was, like, what has 300 episodes really brought you?
Well, you and Alex. There you go.
Cool. I see.
Yeah, well, so we should do some...
I'm Graham.
She was Graham the whole time.
Yeah, I was, sorry.
Thank you for listening to M. Night Shyamalan's The Crate and Crowbar. We should do some sort of outro for you, Pip, and I think it'd be only fair if you had to answer some questions. So, first question. What is your most powerful piece of clothing, and what does it do?
Oh, God. In some ways, I feel like anything that acts as a costume is powerful. You might actually be better placed to answer that for me in terms of, what you think as an outsider.
I think for me there's a sort of, I'm going to get the terminology wrong here. Pinafore?
Oh, yeah.
Or is that a ship? No,
it's... Okay. I mean, if you add HMS, it's a ship.
Yeah. They possess a potent Pip energy. I think most of your clothes just give plus to Pip.
I mean, is that just because it's got like a pocket that I can keep things in?
Yeah, but the fact that you would phrase it like that.
Right, okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, answered. Next question.
Wait, no, I was going to say my heels as well. Like, I don't wear them very often, but I would say that there is a very definite, they physically change how you walk, and they change how people respond to you in some ways. And also, you can weaponize them. So if you stand on someone's foot while you're wearing heels, it really concentrates that weight as pressure down on their
of course, stilettos for a reason.
Yeep.
Yeep, indeed. Next question. What do you think is the most discussed game on this podcast by tags?
Oh, by tags. Because, did anyone bother tagging every time you talked about Dota? Because if
yes, they did.
Oh, then maybe that, to be honest.
That's correct. Got it in one, so Pip should get the prize that Marsh promised.
Did other people not?
Well, we kind of collectively got it. It's a mess. They've just listened to it. They're the listener.
Because I would also say, don't the rest of you wang on a lot about, Deus Ex and things like that, and Hitman?
Hitman's a good shout, actually. I don't know where that was on the list, because we quickly lost faith in the concept of the list. Okay. Then I'm not going to go through all of them. What should we say? Oh, yeah, real easy one. Favourite book ever?
My favourite book? Why is this easy?
It's not.
Oh, I see. The one that I recommend a lot to people is The Star's My Destination by Alfred Bester. It's a science fiction thing that I think it's Galant's released again as like a part of its SF Masterworks collection. Yeah. And it's the one that I have repeatedly lent to people and is thus dog-eared and battered and has been dropped in the bath and so forth.
Good shout.
So, yeah.
Now, to finish us off, you must spell your Twitter handle in the NATO alphabet or your best interpretation of it.
So, is that the same as the one that they used on the bill?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So, P is Papa.
Yeah.
In that. H is ham.
No.
Hilda, Horatio. Chris is mouthing things at me.
Hotel.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it? So Papa, Hotel, Oxford. No, hang on.
Faux.
Oh.
Follow-up.
Oh yeah, no, that's not even my name.
You can make it up as you go.
Hang on. Papa Hotel. I is for igloo. Is it igloo?
I think it's indigo.
Indigo. India. Indigo? Indigo.
Might be India. Don't know.
L is for... Shall I just give up and do my own?
Yes.
Okay, cool. P is for Pip. H is for Pip. I is for Pip. L is for Pip. I is for Pip. P is for Pip. P is also for Pip. A is for Pip. W is for Pip. A is for Pip. R is for Pip. And R is for... Roritos. I wanted to do R as an actual thing and then I could only think of Doritos, which doesn't help.
Good. Well, I'm glad that this double ending of a podcast has stayed at approximately the same sort of ambient shamble level.
Yeah, and I'm just drinking chamomile tea. This is shameful.
Well, I think we should let the nice people go.
What do you think I was spelling? Faux.
I don't know. Let's go.
I think I transitioned because you said hotel, so I was like, okay, well, after the H in hotel, you get an O.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ombre. What? It's an O.
It is an O.
Anyway, goodbye. Thanks
for listening.